Chapter 790. Thank you, senior brother, for your guidance. Zhong Shou really treasured them, keeping the 3 pills into his sleeves. Originally, since the medicinal power of the pill didn't leak out, he didn't need a pill bottle. However, Zhong Shou still found a top treasure bottle from his heaven and earth bag to store the pill. Then, he heard Mingyu say expressionlessly, "Is it convenient for junior brother to follow me back to the vast habitat?" Zhong Shou was startled and then came to his senses. He smiled. What a coincidence! Zhong Shou wants to make a trip back to the sect. He knew that Mingyu definitely had her reasons for saying that. He also had something to do and wanted to return to the vast habitat, so it was convenient. Mingyu nodded slightly, grabbing onto Zhong Shou's arm. The space in front of them twisted once more. This place was actually really far away from the cloud world. If Zhong Shou wanted to return to the cloud world by himself, it would take a lot of effort. Locking onto the location, tracing the source, crossing the void, it would take at least 2 days. However, with Mingyu bringing him, in just a few moments, they had returned to the vast habitat. Standing in the air above the vast habitat, Zhong Shou looked down. It was still early in the morning, and it was totally silent below. Only the sounds of books and lectures spread into the sky. Naturally, it was still really noisy at the side of the righteous and righteous halls. Such scenes made Zhong Shou reminisce about them. Thus, he sent out a thought towards the direction of Book Hiding Hall B. Then, he felt that the doors were tightly shut and there was no one within. As expected, that old man had already left the vast habitat, although his senior brother Han's situation was slightly better than Long Ying's. However, today he had no choice but to fight to the death. He could only hope that everything would go smoothly for him. Samarim's eyes flashed, his face filled with worry as he retracted his thoughts. Mingyu seemed to know what he was thinking and said expressionlessly, "Senior brother Han was in charge of the common people's vast habitat, and because of that, he delayed his cultivation. Whether it's Yuan Jing, Fan Meng, and the other martial uncles, or us martial brothers, none of us will sit idly by." Actually, there was no need to worry. Senior apprentice brother was now ranked 16th in the mysterious Golden Life book, and his accumulation was deep. He is the second strongest person in the deity realm, so he should have a 30% chance of passing the tribulation. As he spoke, he bowed to the sky. Then, a huge palace appeared in the air. "Come with me." Walking in first, Mingyu's expression was solemn. She faced the blank memorial tablet at the top and bowed again. This was Zhong Shou's second time entering the ancestral hall. Following Mingyu's example, they also paid their respects. Then, he saw Mingyu looking up at the sky. Zhong Shou followed his line of sight, and his pupils immediately shrank. What Mingyu was looking at was the god-refined sword that was floating above. It was a pale gold color, and the sword body was covered in layers of scales, just like a few years ago when he first saw it. "Junior brother, can you try?" "Yeah." Zhong Shou looked at Mingyu with a weird expression. He remembered that way Su had said before. To take this sword, one had to be at least late celestial realm and be able to control celestial weapons. Moreover, this god-refined sword was a top celestial sword, even close to god weapon level. "Junior brother, try and see if you can control this sword." Before Zhong Shou opened his mouth to ask, Mingyu urged once more, "Although junior brother's cultivation is a little weak, only spirit realm. But with your current strength, even those celestial realm experts aren't your match. There is no harm in trying." Zhong Shou frowned, but he still followed her words and stepped forwards. He was also fond of this sword and had a natural sense of closeness to it. Just like what Mingyu said, there was no harm in trying. He rose into the air and tried to touch the handle of the god-refined sword. He felt that the sword didn't reject him. Then Zhong Shou grabbed it and his brows furrowed tightly. Who knew how heavy this sword was? Not only was he unable to wave it, but he was also unable to use true chi at all. After trying several times, Zhong Shou shook his head and landed once more. Mingyu and Zhong Shou were surprised that the god-refined sword didn't reject them. However, in the end, her eyes dimmed down and she was filled with disappointment. As expected, it still doesn't work. Mingyu gave out a self-mocking laugh. Her expression was really sad. I was dreaming. Even the few senior masters couldn't use this sword. The six of us can't do it all. Junior brother, you are only spirit realm. Naturally, you can't. Zhongsho looked on from the side and felt weird. I remember senior brother Wei Su said that if someone could use this sword, it would be the time when our Tsang Xingdao would rise. That's right. However, the order is reversed. Mingyu nodded her head slightly and explained, this sword is the sword of the people path. To use it, one needs the recognition of the sword spirit. The sword spirit was born from master's blood. It could even be said to be a part of teacher Shizi's soul. To be the master of this sword, one must have the ability to revolutionize the world. At that time, our Tsang Shengdao teachings would have been spread, and naturally we would have risen. Zhongsho listened on quietly, thinking to himself that no wonder he couldn't use it. There were so many Saint Realm experts in the common people path, but they couldn't do anything to this sword. Before this, he felt that he had some fate with this God-refined sword. Only now did he know that he was dreaming. However, the questions in his heart still weren't solved. Since he couldn't use this sword, it wasn't a big deal. Why was Mingyu so worried? This sword had been hanging here for these 10,000 years. It shouldn't be a problem if it was left for a period of time. Junior brother doesn't know that when Master wanted to get that heaven-opening treasure in the cloud world, actually, he predicted that he would most probably die. Thus, he crafted 7 top celestial swords and split them between the 6 of us. He said that once the 7 swords merged into one, it could slay end realm experts. It could suppress the fate of our vast habitat. Unfortunately, this God-refined sword was unable to find a master for 10,000 years. Pausing for a moment, Mingyu hesitated for a moment before speaking up. 30 years later, our Tsang Shengdao will face a huge calamity. It isn't the Taoist faction or the Confucian faction. It is a huge enemy of Master. At most, in 30 years, he will recover from his injuries and break free. If that person comes, although our Tsang Xingdao doesn't fear him. However, who knows how many of the disciples we have built up over these years will fall. Zhongsho's face turned serious. To be able to make Mingyu so worried, this person was definitely strong. This enemy was probably even stronger than Xianqing. Without thinking, Zhongsho said, along with Master Long Ying, he was also a member of Tsang Xingdao and had a responsibility to help. However, before he finished, he was interrupted by Mingyu. These 50 years are really important to Dragon Shadow, Saint Venerable. Unless we have no choice, it is best if we don't disturb him. Don't go overboard. Junior brother Wei Su schemed against the Saint Venerable many times. It was okay once or twice, but 3 or 4 times, he didn't know when to stop. Forming a good relationship with Long Ying is to fight the various factions of the cloud world. This is a matter of our Tsang Shengdao, and we can't trouble others. Zhongsho was startled once more, and then he was speechless. If that was the case, then it was really a huge problem for Tsang Xingdao. He couldn't help but look at the God-refined sword once more, and he felt depressed. Even if he had this sword that could kill an end realm expert, it couldn't protect Tsang Xingdao disciples. So what was the point of having it? Just at this moment, Zhongsho felt the nameless sword in his sleeve shake. Chapter 791. At the start, Zhongsho didn't feel anything. Only when the shaking got stronger and stronger did he notice. A crisp sword-ringing sound spread out from his sleeves and reverberated throughout the ancestral hall. Zhongsho couldn't help but laugh. Do you think so too? This sword is good, but unfortunately, it is useless to me, Tsang Xingdao. The nameless sword was already ringing. Who knows if it was agreeing with what Zhongsho said or protesting against it. Zhongsho found it weird. Thinking about it carefully, he patted the sword body in his sleeves as if he was right. Don't worry, your master doesn't want this sword. The nameless sword could refine the soul and strengthen various spells. Although it wasn't especially sharp, it was really tough. It also had the ability to evolve. When it first landed in his hands, it was just an intermediate magical treasure. At this moment, it had advanced to high grade. In Zhongsho's eyes, the value of this sword was no lower than the God-refined sword. Sooner or later, it would become a celestial artifact. Speaking of which, Song Shengdao, this Shizi ancestor was really weird. Since he knew that he was in danger of dying, he left the sword formation. He should have tried his best to protect the sect. However, he ended up refining such a sword with such strict requirements, and no one could use it. The only weird thing was that until now, he still didn't know where this sword came from. That day when he was in the common people's vast habitat, this sword suddenly fell in front of him. All right, senior brother Mingyu spent most of his time guarding the cloud world, so maybe he knew a thing or two. The nameless sword was still ringing, but the vibrating sound was getting lower. It was like it was really satisfied, but also like it was really depressed. Anyways, it slowly calmed down. Zhongsho didn't care much about it, and was about to ask. Mingyu spoke first. Zhongsho, do you know Senior Master Yuanjing? When Zhongsho heard that, he looked over with a weird expression. Yuanjing, Wanderer Lin Xianjing, one of the few patriarchs in the sect, the ancestor of Taiyuan's sect. How could he not know? Why did this senior brother Mingyu ask him about this for no reason? Then, junior martial brother, do you know about Martial Ant Yuanjing? 20 years ago, he stepped into End Realm. Mingyu asked with a gloomy expression. It's because her lifespan is up and the spiritual wave is about to rise. I, Song Shengdao, am in urgent need of combat power. However, his foundations weren't complete, and he was much weaker than a true End Realm expert. 100,000 years later, there is still the risk of death. There was actually such a thing. Zhongsho was silent as he recalled the past. Thinking back to the battle at mysterious Cloud Spirit Sect, his eyes were filled with understanding. There was no need for Mingyu to continue. He already knew what this senior brother was implying. Senior brother wants to ask my brother Ao to help Yuanjing fix her foundations. Seeing that Mingwei didn't finish, it was obvious that she agreed. She looked over in anticipation. Zhongsho shook his head solemnly. Naturally, I won't reject this matter. However, looking at brother Ao, before the grievances are settled, he won't be able to be distracted and won't be able to care about this matter. Even if he agrees, it will be tough for him to do it. If he doesn't comprehend the creation Tao, he won't be able to grasp the existence Tao. Brother Ao is still lacking a lot. As he said this, his heart moved. Ao Kuan couldn't do it, but maybe he could. Creation and destruction and absolute beginning and end were related and could be developed from one another. The existence and destruction Tao required one to learn about cause and effect, fate, time, space, etc. Ao Kuan was lacking a little, but Zhongsho was lacking. Although his core technique wasn't the existence and destruction Tao, it was the Tao of the 3,000 Taos, the Tao of the simplest Taos. Although existence and destruction was strong, it was also one of the Taos. Or maybe he could try. However, for him to reach that stage and have enough strength to help Yuanjing fix her foundations, he needed time. Zhongsho was in deep thought while Mingyu knew that he was in a tough spot. She couldn't help but sigh. That makes sense. Not only is the creation Tao hard to find, but Ao Kuan is also desperate for revenge. To ask him to heavily injure his source to help Yuanjing fix her foundations is a little too much. This matter isn't urgent. I was too anxious. Zhongsho, you don't have to worry about it. After he said this, he walked out of the ancestral hall with a heavy heart. Zhongsho waited for his senior brother to finish and was about to open his mouth. Just as he was about to speak, Mingyu stepped into the void and left the common people's vast habitat, leaving behind a cold voice. The outer region is different from the cloud world, and there are many experts. There are many who can be on the same level as you. Zhongsho, you do need to be careful when you're roaming the outer region. If you face a calamity and can't handle it alone, you can use my Song Shengdao token to ask for help. Zhongsho was stunned, and then he laughed bitterly. This senior brother Mingyu left in a bit too much of a hurry. He had many things to say and many questions to ask. Then, he didn't bother too much. Actually, it was a little too early to say that he could help Yuanjing Senior Master. Instead of saying that, why not use his heart to do it? He just needed to spend some time to study this Tao, and when he entered the Saint Realm, naturally he would be able to succeed. As for the background of the Nameless Sword, he wasn't in a rush. To be willing to give this sword to him, it had to be someone who had a close relationship with him. Although Mingyu's voice was still there, his aura was nowhere to be seen. Zhong Shou couldn't stay in the ancestral hall, turning around to look at the god-refined sword and mysterious golden life book. Then, he shook his head and turned around to walk out of the ancestral hall. In the next moment, Zhong Shou appeared outside of the book hiding hall A. This was the true forbidden land of the common people's vast habitat. Its importance was even above the technique teaching floor and was only lower than the ancestral hall. There was an individual spiritual formation restriction. When Zhong Shou arrived, he was slightly stopped. However, with his identity, he could enter and exit the entire common people's vast habitat. That spiritual light flashed like he had confirmed with the mysterious golden life book in the ancestral hall. The spiritual formation restrictions here were totally open to him. Zhong Shou stepped in and looked around curiously. In the past, he had the right to enter this place. However, with his Earth Realm cultivation then, it was useless even if he came. Only now did he ask himself if he had enough strength to comprehend these books, only to see that this place was actually a 10,000 feet small world. However, although it was called a book hiding hall, there weren't many books. Most of the bookshelves were filled with many jade scrolls. The books here were the most precious collection of the common people's vast habitat. Without enough paper to record, they could only use these jade scrolls to record with their intent. Although there were many areas that were not real, it was better than nothing. Zhong Shou picked up each jade scrolls and didn't try to understand them. He only memorized the contents in his heart. When he met some really interesting ones that were useful to him, he would study them carefully. Before this, he didn't lie to Mingyu. He did have something to do and had to return to the common people's vast habitat. Before leaving the cloud world, what he cared about the most were the books that he wasn't able to read. Since he couldn't return to the cloud world for 20 years, naturally, he had to make some preparations. This book hiding hall, it was his top priority. Half an hour later, a flame suddenly flashed outside the building and appeared behind him. I was wondering who it was to actually be able to enter this book hiding hall A. So does Zhong Shou, you fellow. Shui Lingbo's voice was filled with surprise. Then, she gloated, I haven't congratulated Ruler for stepping into the spirit realm. During the Gantian Mountain battle, using the flying knife technique to slay several celestial realm experts. How impressive. However, it seems like the cloud world can't tolerate your highness anymore. Junior sister, you praise me too much. Zhong Shou laughed involuntarily as he continued to pick up the jade scrolls, using his intent to sweep them. He was distracted as he teased Shui Lingbo. Is it so difficult for you, Shui Lingbo, to call me senior brother? Speaking of which, although Zhong Shou, was forced out of the cloud world, someone doesn't even have the right. Sai. Shui Lingbo ground her teeth in hatred and asked, what exactly are you looking for by looking at the flowers on horseback? I'm not looking for it. I'm just memorizing it. No wonder Shui Lingbo couldn't think of it. After one cultivated to the spirit realm, one should focus on specialization, turning the complicated into the simple, focusing on one or two daos. Being knowledgeable and learning all sorts of things would not only not be beneficial, but would also become an obstacle for a certain period of time. The moment he said that, as expected, Shui Lingbo didn't understand. Zhong Shou wasn't willing to explain. The Tao path he chose for himself was the word Tao. The Tao of the heavenly path, the Tao of the 3,000 Taos, the Tao of the simplest Taos, the Tao that included everything. Thus, he directly changed the topic. However, I was just looking to see if there was a technique to temporarily seal spiritual sense and true essence. Seal spiritual sense and true essence? What do you need such a technique for? After Shui Lingbo said that, she looked closely at Zhong Shou and understood. He was different from her, who had decades of accumulation before she stepped into the spirit realm. Logically speaking, he would be able to grasp that new strength. Zhong Shou's cultivation was improving too quickly. His cultivation could be said to have soared to the heavens in a short few years, becoming a spirit realm expert. However, his strength was far stronger than people of the same grade. At this moment, after charging into the late spirit realm, he was obviously unable to control his strength and spiritual sense. She guessed that Zhongsho had already noticed, which was why he wanted to search for such a technique. Thinking about it for a moment, Shui Lingbo's body flashed to the side of a bookshelf far away. She tossed a jade letter towards Zhongsho. This is the 7-cycle Xiantong full restriction. For you, this should be the best. You can seal it and slowly polish it. It can be used for 7 cycles to help you enter the profound realm. If you face a battle, you can unseal it and go all out. Not bad. Zhongsho took the jade letter in his hand and used his spiritual sense to scan it. Joy appeared on his face. Thank you. This Shui Lingbo really knew what he wanted. What he needed was such a cultivation method, and he couldn't help but feel grateful. If not for this woman, if he wanted to find such a method in these jade letters, it would take dozens of days. He could at most stay in the cloud world for 2 months. If he wasted too much time in this book hiding hall, it would cause problems. No need. Shui Lingbo scoffed coldly and drove her sword out of the door. Before she went out, she opened her mouth once more. The outer region is dangerous. You need to be careful. The famous blood sword monster lord of the cloud world, don't die outside. Chapter 792. The outer region is dangerous. You need to be careful. The famous blood sword monster lord of the cloud world, don't die outside. Zhongsho smiled when he heard that. This was the third person to say that. Although Shui Lingbo's tone was weird, it was filled with deep concern. I am okay here. Junior sister, you are in charge of the vast habitat and are being attacked from both inside and outside the cloud world. Junior sister will be really annoyed in these few decades. When senior brother returns, it is best if junior sister's cultivation isn't left too far behind. Shui Lingbo held her breath. Then, she didn't bother about Zhongsho and directly flew into the air. Zhongsho's lips curled up as he focused once more on what was in front of him. With just a sweep of his spiritual sense, he memorized all the information within the letter in his heart. He meditated on the spot and comprehended it. In just 4 hours, he comprehended half of it. This path technique is really amazing. It can really connect the Xian down to the smallest detail. In just 3 to 5 years, I can solve this problem. Who created it? Normal cultivators, apart from those who relied on external strength to obtain the Tao, wouldn't be able to use this technique. Zhongsho visualized the last paragraph of the scripture. It was the signature portion. Zhongsho was instantly startled. Shizi, the person who created this technique, was ancestor Song Xingdao. So that was the case. Roughly 10,000 years ago, the Shizi was probably the same as him. He also faced problems where he progressed too quickly and his spiritual sense was too strong, such that he nearly lost control. However, Zhongsho had the ancestor's technique as a reference, and Shizi had no place to learn such techniques, so he could only create this 7-cycle Xiantong full restriction technique. 10,000 years later, he benefited from it. Zhongsho smiled, and then flicked out 7 drops of essence blood from his fingertips. He then activated the seal, causing the essence blood to change in the air, forming many restrict spiritual charms. 4 of the talismans were imprinted on his palms and feet. One was located between his eyebrows, where his source soul was located, and the other was located right in his heart. The last one sank into his qi. When the 7 cycles Xiantong full restriction was completed, Zhongsho's violent aura immediately calmed down. 7 talismans suppressed all of the true power. It was tightly bound within the chakra meridians, unable to move. It was the same in his soul sea. More than half of the surging soul power sea had solidified. However, Zhongsho was also unable to control it. It's a pity that the 7 cycles profound insight complete restriction still has some flaws. Once he used this technique, his cultivation would not be able to advance. It seems that Shi Zi's master still hasn't perfected this secret technique. It could be that he had already solved the hidden danger of the true power swelling, so he threw it aside, or it could be that he did not have the time to perfect it. In short, this 7-cycle Xiantong full restriction did have many flaws. However, this was only a minor issue. Those minor issues did not affect the function of the secret technique itself. What he was most worried about was the explosive increase in strength. Before he totally controlled it and reached the intricate realm, it was best if he didn't consider the advancement of his cultivation. He cast a spell, and then the 7 Xiantong realm's spiritual charms instantly condensed into a single point according to his thoughts. A large portion of the talisman's power was instantly removed. His true qi and soul sense broke free from the restrictions once more. Zhongsho's eyes flashed, revealing a look of joy. 70% strength. In just half a breath, it can increase to 90%. This 7-cycle Xiantong full restriction wasn't like what Shui Lingbo had said. When he fought with others, he could go all out and only use 70% of his strength. However, this 70% strength could be instantly unlocked without any stagnation. As expected from something created by Shizi, it was indeed extraordinary. It surprised him greatly. What Zhongsho hoped for was that within these 2 to 3 years, he wouldn't be too weak and get ambushed by others. This 7-cycle Xiantong full restriction technique was just what he needed. After solving the biggest problem, Zhongsho heaved a sigh of relief. The worries in his heart were all gone as he casually browsed through this book, Hiding Hall A. He memorized as much as he could from those jade scrolls. However, although the small world within this book, Hiding Hall, it was only 10,000 feet. However, there were many books and jade slips stored within. Most of them were the cultivation experiences of Tsang, Shengdao, cultivators, and many factionless cultivators, their comprehension of the Grand Dao and their heart realm. No matter if it was success or failure, it was all thought-provoking and could be used as an example. After 10,000 years of accumulation, naturally it was as vast as an ocean. Zhongsho didn't eat or drink, didn't sleep or rest. He spent close to a month in the building and only flipped through a tenth of it. Knowing that he didn't have much time left, Zhongsho looked at this place longingly before finally leaving and stepping out of the building. His next goal was the Technique Teaching Hall 2. During these 2 years, he wasn't in the common people's vast habitat, so naturally, he wasn't able to accumulate much merit points. However, after wiping out those dozens of Taoist sects, he did obtain many mind stones. The Taoist scriptures that he obtained were also numerous. Most of them were left by Zhongsho in Gantian Mountain. There was also a small portion that could see the light of day, which Zhongsho brought to the common people's vast habitat after leaving copies. Exchanging for them, his gains were also not small. Zhongsho wanted to go from complex to simple to form that Tao word. He wanted to merge all sorts of techniques into his foundations. However, till today, it was still just a concept in his mind. He still didn't understand the meaning of the Tao word. Since he went through the tribulation, he spent many days comprehending, but still had no idea. Naturally, he didn't have any improvements. He only felt that the road ahead was filled with thorns and thorns. There were tens of thousands of mountains and thousands of giant rivers. However, Zhongsho wasn't someone who would cower in fear. Instead, it ignited the bloodthirsty nature in his bones. If the mountain was tall, he would slash. If the river was huge, he would break. He didn't believe that Zhongsho wouldn't be able to get through it. At this moment, he wasn't able to comprehend the true meaning of the Tao word. Apart from his cultivation not being enough, it was also because he didn't have enough accumulations. Apart from that, to comprehend the Tao clearly, one needed luck. Zhongsho wasn't willing to wait so passively. In the future, when he comprehended, he would use the stupidest method. Didn't this Tao word contain 3,000 Taos? Then, Zhongsho would first take down all the 3,000 Taos. That would be the same as totally grasping this technique. He didn't believe that at that time, he wouldn't be able to comprehend the essence of the Tao word. He stayed for several more days to memorize all the books in his mind. Zhongsho was finally satisfied. However, before he left, he specially took 3-star shining talismans from Shui Lingbo. It was said that it was written by a few Saint Realm experts in the sect. This celestial talisman had no other use and had no killing ability. However, the moment it was used, a star would appear in the skies of the surrounding hundreds of worlds. As long as Zhang Xingdao's fellow sect members saw it, they would rush over right away. Zhong Shou wasn't an arrogant person. The outer region wasn't the cloud-connecting world. There were numerous celestial realms and many god realms. Zhong Shou could command the winds and clouds in the cloud world, but in the outer region, he wasn't much. When he faced people he couldn't defeat, there was nothing to be ashamed of asking fellow sect members for help. Chapter 793. When he returned to Gantian Mountain, Zhong Shou still used the power of the teleportation jade letter. With his current cultivation, even if he was far away from the Deqian border, he still had strength comparable to celestial realm experts. However, if he wanted to travel 70,000 miles in an instant, he was unable to do so. Even if he went all out, he would need several days. From this, one could see the strength of the Saint Realm. When he reached the peak, Zhong Shou instinctively looked up into the sky, only to see that the silver cocoon formed by the Yin Dragon still hadn't dissolved. However, the absorption of the heaven and earth spiritual energy, as well as the Saint King energy within Gantian Mountain, had stopped. At this moment, the size of the silver cocoon was even larger. Numerous pure white flames burned furiously, wrapping around it. The entire cocoon was like a heart that was jumping. Each time it jumped up, it would cause spiritual energy ripples thousands of miles around Gantian Mountain. One intense flame, would it be cooked? Zhong Shou scolded out in his heart before looking into the palace once more. Hanyan Palace was as cold as usual. The entire Deqian ruling area had shifted to Jing'an Peak, not far away. Within the palace, Zhong Shou didn't use many palace maids, and there were very few people. However, it was because of this that this place was so quiet. Living here was very comfortable and carefree. Zhong Shou stepped forwards, first heading to the building that Kong Yao lived in. The moment he stepped in, he heard the sounds of swords ringing out. Zhong Shou couldn't help but shake his head. Why was Kong Yao practicing the sword in the middle of the night? However, thinking about it, concubine Yao was in charge of the army and had to deal with many matters every day. She really didn't have any free time during the day. The moment he stepped through the door, the nearly perfect and flawless sword intent instantly changed. The energy interacted with one another, and a snow-bright sword light appeared. It charged out from within the door. Zhong Shou didn't care, his right hand flicking out to strike the sword light away. However, just as he did that, Zhong Shou exclaimed, looking over in shock. Spirit and martial arts as one. Kong Yao had really done it, and right from the start, it was close to 30% fusion. Kong Yao, who was on the opposite side, also realized that the person who came was Zhong Shou. It's my husband. Her watery eyes flashed, and then became even more resolute. The momentum of the sword in his hand became increasingly fierce. He did not hold back and no longer had any scruples. He directly attacked between Zhong Shou's brows. His Tao of war and sword intent were fully utilized. It also merged the strength of the Gantian army into it. It was as if he could not wait to behead Zhong Shou with his sword. Seeing this, Zhong Shou's forehead broke out in cold sweat. Could it be that this Kong Yao wanted to take revenge for the previous incident and planned to murder her husband here? Last time on the Sky Ascension platform, this girl seemed to be willing, but in fact, she harbored hatred in her heart. He no longer dared to be distracted and retreated slightly. His right hand's finger drew a beautiful arc and struck towards the space in front of him. It forced the sword light, which was originally stabbing, over to change its trajectory. Kong Yao gritted her teeth and knew that this sword was useless. She decided not to bother. Sword shadows fell. It turned into millions of sword shadows and slashed down, slicing the space in front of her into numerous pieces. She saw that hand start to control the power of space. Bits of spiritual light brought about numerous beautiful arcs. It changed unpredictably, deceitful and unpredictable as it passed through the sword shadows. It continuously folded space and twisted cause and effect. His fingers pretty much continuously tapped on Kong Yao's sword. No matter how Kong Yao tried to block or change the path of the sword, she was helpless. Zhong Shou didn't use much strength. After 10 consecutive strikes, Kong Yao's sword was unable to dance anymore. She kept her sword and retreated 100 feet away. She looked at Zhong Shou with a dejected expression. As expected, I can't even force out 10% of your strength. Zhong Shou's lips curled up. It wasn't 10%. This sword forced out at least 20% of his strength. Just now, he seemed really casual, but it wasn't easy at all. A weird glow appeared in his eyes as he asked curiously, "When did you grasp spirit and martial arts merger? Or is it your origin law?" It seems. She frowned and thought back to just now. Zhong Shou's expression became weirder and weirder. At this moment, not only did Kong Yao confirm her foundations, she seemed to be walking the same path as Shuriwa. First confirm the foundations, and then give birth to the outer path from simple to complicated. It is technique. Technique is the Tao. Technique is the law. Spells, learning, algebra, strategy, stratagems, politics, there was nothing that it did not cover. This is my foundation. Kong Yao smiled, her brow rising up, her eyes filled with confidence. My Kong family also obtained some legalism legacy 10,000 years ago. Unfortunately, it wasn't complete. Technique, and strength. Out of the 3 Daos, I only obtained technique and strength. Later on, our Kong family ancestors combined it with the Daoist faction's knowledge and developed it. Unfortunately, the number of people who managed to learn it could be counted with one hand. Father knew that I led troops, which was why he taught me this technique. Apart from that, he also merged with the military path to perfect this technique. Zhong Shou was enlightened, thinking to himself that it was no wonder. So this Kong family also obtained a portion of the legalism legacy. This Kong Rui's talent was really shocking. Speaking of which, even if he stepped into the spirit realm today, he still couldn't see through his true strength. He only knew that this person should be at the peak of the spirit realm. However, he kept his skills hidden and was only famous for his Xianmen divination. No one knew about his martial path and spiritual cultivation. However, since he could teach Kong Yao, his strength was definitely not ordinary. There was also the legalism faction. 10,000 years ago, they pretty much suppressed everything. They supported the Qin dynasty and pretty much wiped out the Taoist faction and Confucian faction. Their core techniques were the 3 Daos of technique and strength. The ancestor of the legalism faction was said to be on the same level as Shizi. However, because he angered everyone and died early, he wasn't able to reach half a step to true realm. However, he wasn't like Shizi. Whether or not he died was still something that wasn't confirmed. As Kong Yao said this, she looked towards Zhong Shou with a weird expression. "Husband, why did you look for me so late at night? Is it to prepare to attack the outer region?" "It is already prepared." 7 spaceships had been prepared. The people driving the ships are all experts that I personally chose. 300,000 elite soldiers, 3,000 Black Fox Iron Cavalry, as well as the 3,000 grade, 5 swordsmen of the Kinzo sect can follow you to battle at any time. Suddenly thinking about something, Kong Yao's face flushed red. She shifted her gaze away. "If husband wants to serve me, can you come back after some time?" That day when I followed you to sense the Tao, Kong Yao only comprehended 30%. "I really don't have time." It was that preposterous scene on the heaven-reaching platform. She followed Zhong Shou and entered the heaven and man merger state. This was why she was able to grasp spirit and martial arts merger in a short month and establish her foundations. When Zhong Shou heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He came over this time to ask Kong Yao whether or not she needed the jade Xian purple clear pill. Shaking his head slightly, Zhong Shou's expression turned solemn. He calmed down and started to guide Kong Yao on her sword technique. His sword Dao was #1 in the world, and he was also studying the Dao word. At this moment, just a few words were enough to enlighten Kong Yao and make her happy. She was totally immersed in the sword technique and didn't have time to bother about him. In just an hour, Zhong Shou could only leave helplessly. The second person he wanted to find was Ruo Shui. However, when Zongsho walked into Ruoshue's room, he didn't see her. Without needing to think, Zongsho knew that Ruoshue was most probably at Xianyuan Irin's place. Walking back to the central palace, as expected, Zongsho sensed two familiar auras in the side hall that had been changed into a pill room. Xianyuan Irin was probably refining pills. Before he even got close, he felt a burning hot aura. The spirit of the fire was extremely thick and blazing. Walking into the hall, as expected, he saw Xianyuan Irin focused on the pill furnace in front of her. She used spells to control the earth flames under the furnace. Ruoshue actually didn't sleep, holding a fan as she stared at the pill furnace in a daze. Noticing Zongsho's arrival, Xianyuan Irin's body shuddered. Even the flames under the furnace started to shake. Ruoshue was surprised, slightly panicking. Her eyes were hesitating whether or not she should flee. However, thinking about it, in front of Zongsho, she probably wouldn't be able to flee. She could only sigh in annoyance and accept her fate. Zongsho was speechless when he saw that. Was he Lei Feng? Why was she so worried? However, thinking about it, that day after the tribulation, in his excitement, he did torture Irin and Ruoshue such that they couldn't get out of bed for a few days. When he walked in front of the furnace and sat down, Xianyuan Irin had already regained her calmness. "Husband, this furnace of pills is at an important moment. Can you come back later?" Ruoshue's expression turned solemn as she used the fan to fan the fire. This fan was also a spiritual artifact. The fan shadow landed. What it waved wasn't the wind, but the 5 elements of heaven and earth. She said softly, "Ruoshue wants to help Sister Irin control the fire." Zongsho laughed and didn't reply. Then, he calmly took out the 3 Jade Xian clear purple pills from his sleeves. Xianyuan Irin originally didn't care, but when the glow of the pills spread out, there was no medicinal fragrance. Only then did her expression change. Then, he forcefully snatched the 3 pills away. This pill can actually merge energy into one. In this world, there's actually such a pill technique. Taking it in her hand to analyze it, Xianyuan Irin's eyes were filled with shock. Then, she looked towards Zongsho with a questioning gaze. "What is the name of this pill? What is its use?" "This is the Jade Xian Clear Purple Pill. As for its use," before he said anything, Xianyuan Irin interrupted him once more. "It can allow one to merge spirit and martial arts before God Realm Right." Thinking back to it, Xianyuan Irin took in a deep breath. "I heard that it was refined by the Taoist faction Qing Xian. It is a celestial grade pill. After consuming it, even a normal person would have a chance to directly reach the Saint Realm. Unfortunately, the grade of this pill is too high and there are restrictions within. There is no way to deduce how this pill was refined. It is of no benefit to my pill path." Husband brought these 3 Jade Xian clear purple pills back. Could it be that you want me and Ruoshue to consume them? Chapter 794. After a night, the sleeping hall was in a mess. Ruoshue's body was laid out as she slept on the bed. She loved to sleep, and after being tortured by Zongsho for a night, she wasn't willing to wake up. Xianyuan Irin laid on Zongsho's body, her expression sad. Although she didn't say anything, her reluctance to part was obvious. Zongsho was going to leave the cloud world and couldn't return for 20 years. Kong Yao was the right inspector and had to take charge of the Deqian army. As the mother of the country, she had to replace Zongsho to take charge of Gantian Mountain. They couldn't leave and head to the outer region together, which meant that they couldn't meet for 20 years. If it wasn't for the child in her stomach, she would have spent these few days with Zongsho, having fun and doing those shameless things. Perhaps only extreme joy, that incomparable feeling of fullness, could reduce the unresolvable sorrow in his chest. Zongsho kept silent. Numerous spiritual items were placed in front of him, a dazzling sight. A message talisman would fly out from his sleeves, carrying a spiritual artifact or pill as they flew into the distance. He was picking out parting gifts for his friends and family, as well as his subordinates. Hu Qianxiu was a heavy knife, an intermediate magical treasure. It was extremely sharp and could replace that Tiger King knife. He gave Zhao Yinren 9 extreme red lightning pearls. It was said that when these things exploded, they could flatten 1,000 miles. Its strength was insane. That crazy woman, this was the best gift she could give him. As for Rimbois, it was an extreme purple pill. No matter if this pill had the effect of prolonging lifespan or whether it was useful to him, it represented his feelings. Even Ling Yun's sex, Gu Han Yun, who he rarely met, had one. Naturally, without exception, these things were all snatched from the various Taoist sects. And Jin Buhui, Zhong Shou frowned, keeping the things in front of him. It was best if he personally went to meet this brother of his before he left. According to the investigation of Roi Shui's shadow guards, Buhui's recent situation was worrying, making him very worried. Coincidentally, there was something that he could do along the way. The Qin Emperor's side tomb could already be taken. With his current strength, no one would dare to compete with him. At this moment, he urgently needed the spirit stones in the tomb. With that thought in mind, Zhongsho let go of everything and hugged Xianyuan Iren's body even tighter. He smiled and said, "I'll be leaving in half a month. I was wondering if the two of us should go to the place where we first met and go sightseeing before we part. The scenery of Cloud Saint's city is so beautiful. I've always missed it." He thought about the Demon Corpse Mountain, and the warning the Nine-Een Nethermaiden gave him when she appeared didn't seem enough. Before he left, it would be best to give him a warning. If such a person did not show his power, he would definitely cause trouble into Qian territory in the future. If it weren't for the fact that the sealing formation there was connected to the earth flame of the earth vein, forcefully breaking it open would have affected the earth vein of the Donglin kingdom. He wanted nothing more than to kill him right now. Although the sealing formation there had sealed the demon, it had also firmly protected it, making it impossible for anyone to do anything to it. Xianyuan Iren's eyes lit up, following which she burst out laughing. "The place where we first met should be Xian Mountain City, right? At that time, you were still a kid with a runny nose." When Zhongsho heard that, he felt awkward, and only then did he recall. In Zhongsho's memory, there was such a thing. Then he was furious. He remembered that the one who chased behind him to play with him was that brat Iren. However, before he was able to act up, Zhongsho squinted and looked outside of the hall, only to see that the giant silver cocoon hanging in the air finally broke open. Along with a clear dragon roar, a giant silver dragon broke out from within the cocoon. It was still 10,000 feet in size, covered in silver dragon scales, looking like before he went through the tribulation. If one had to say what had changed, it would be that the dragon aura was much stronger. There was also the sky full of silver flames which burned furiously, adding to its aura. There seemed to be something more in its body which made Zhongsho feel wary. Looking on quietly, Zhongsho's mind was spinning. Kong Rue said that this Een dragon is recovering the strength it had when it was alive. It is probably true. Who knows what kind of dragon it is, but it seems really strong. Same era. Is it really that destruction dragon? The Long Ing rose up, passing through the cloud ocean like it was venting something. The dragon roar contained an overwhelming rage, all sorts of unwillingness, and a vicious aura. However, when it flew 1,000,000 feet high and smashed numerous cracks in the space barrier, it was stopped by an invisible force. He was bound by an invisible power and fell back onto Gantian Mountain City. It couldn't help but roar out, shaking the heavens. Xianyuan Iren looked on, shaking her head slightly. For some reason, looking at this dragon, I feel really sad. Iren feels so sad and pitiful. Zhongsho laughed in disdain, thinking to himself that this was what Kong Rue was talking about. Its body and Gantian Mountain had merged into one. When it recovered its strength, it had no memory and its intelligence was really low. After it recovered, maybe it remembered the past, which was why it was unwilling. However, at this moment, it was already too late. The giant silver dragon didn't struggle anymore. It swam its body back to the peak of Gantian Mountain and then looked towards Zhongsho. Man and dragon stared at one another, sparks fly. Unexpectedly, the man and the dragon were able to understand each other's thoughts through their gazes. "Before I return, if anything happens to Gantian Mountain, I will peel your skin and pull out your tendons, cook you and eat you." That giant silver dragon mocked coldly. "With just you? You are far from enough. Let's talk when you can beat me." Zhongsho scoffed and didn't say anything more. 20 years later, even with the Book of Ian, he might not be its match. However, the future is long. Just you wait. His heart totally relaxed. The Ian Dragon and Gantian Mountain had a deeper connection now. If anything happened to Gantian Mountain, he wouldn't sit still and do nothing. In the next few days, Zhongsho accompanied Xianyuan, Irin, and Ruoshui. He didn't meditate or cultivate. In the end, he dragged Kong Yao to play around Cloud Saint City. He was so happy that he didn't want to go home. It wasn't until the 5th day that he finally moved and headed towards the central cloud continent. He traveled swiftly, crossing hundreds of thousands of miles. He drove the royal demon god shuttle for 2 full days before he found the Qin Emperor's subtomb. This place was originally the vast ocean desert, but at this moment, it was a black mist that spread above the sand ocean. Zhongshoxin knew that this was because he had opened a hole in the tomb, which caused the death energy to leak out. Apart from that, along with the spiritual wave exploding, the formation in the tomb was also a little unstable. Luckily, the black mist was light, and there were no traces of people in the sand ocean. During these few years, it didn't startle those cultivators. However, looking at the situation, at most in 2 years, it wouldn't be able to be hidden anymore. Standing in the air, Zhongsho wasn't as careful as he was a few years ago. The nameless sword flew out from his sleeves and slashed down with a sword light. It pierced through the sand and also broke the heavy restrictions. Chapter 795. Along with the sword's shadow stirring, a violent wind blew. The sand beneath the ground was forcefully blown away. The spiritual energy here started to surge, the commotion spreading thousands of miles around. Instantly, several spiritual senses swept over from the vast ocean. Zhongsho didn't care at all and didn't bother. He used the nameless sword to forcefully break open the dome of the Qin King's subtomb. What entered his eyes was the miniature world of mountains and rivers within the tomb. The restriction spiritual formation within also came to life. Countless arrows pierced through the air and shot over. Even after 10,000 years, these mechanisms were still really strong. The sharpest ones made even Zhongsho feel a chill down his spine. The tip of the arrow seemed to be covered in poison, pitch black and dark, the smell making one dizzy. That strong and overbearing sword light instantly changed, splitting into millions of streaks. Beneath Zhongsho's body, it formed a vast sword veil, blocking a large portion of the arrows. His body teleported. Just as these arrows stopped after a round, he drilled into the tomb below. Where the sword light pointed, all the restrictions and spiritual patterns were broken, unable to stop him at all. Following which, the terracotta soldiers that were buried along with the tomb started to move. A red glow flashed in their eyes, the dust around their bodies falling down. Those 12,000-foot tall, giant copper men all came to life, turning their heads and looking over at Zhongsho. That strong intent caused Zhongsho's heart to sink. He was slightly shocked. This copper man puppet actually has intelligence and soul remembrance. It's like a living person. Oh, this is the mountain river true intent. They actually merged their martial path intent into the puppets. Not only can their strength compare to celestial realm, even their intent is similar. Who knows how their combat techniques are? The artifact crafting techniques of the ancient Mai's faction are really extraordinary. Qin rose up and unified the Cloud Continent. The first faction to fall was the Mai's faction that spread love and not attack, specializing in artifact crafting. Most of their artifact crafting techniques were obtained by Qin. These 12 bronze men should have been made at that time. Looking at their combat strength, each one of them was comparable to intermediate celestial realm. It was said that in the main tomb of the Qin Emperor, there were 12 true copper men protector. Almost every one of them was comparable to a sage. In the past, Zhongsho was skeptical. Only now did he realize that the Mo clan's puppet technique was indeed extraordinary when he faced the mental pressure of the 12 bronze figures. His figure flashed through the tomb. Everywhere he went, he swept up everything of value into his sleeve. The value of that mountain of gold and silver was too low, so he didn't have the time to pay attention to it. However, Zhongsho took all the spirit stones that had been buried with him. This was of utmost importance to him, even more so than the spirit artifact materials in the tomb. Just the amount of mind stones here was enough for him to use the Book of Ian to accelerate by 70 to 80 years. The total was almost 10 times more than the total of the 40 oversects he had destroyed in the Central Cloud continent. After that came the materials. As for spirit tools and magical tools, they came in second place. After all, this was just a sub-tomb, so the treasures buried here wouldn't be of a high level. Zhongsho himself had no use for most of them, but if he could send them back to Gantian Mountain, it would allow the new Qin country to raise another grade. There were also pills, which were of utmost importance. In order to increase his lifespan, the Qin Emperor used alchemists in his later years to refine countless pills. Although this was a sub-tomb, more or less, there should be some treasures. Thinking about the Xiong king who died in poverty, there were several extreme purple pills amongst his treasures. The treasures buried with the rich Qin Emperor naturally made one look forward to it. However, the place where those pills were stored was right beside the coffin of the Qin Emperor. It was also the most dangerous place here, where the restrictions were the most concentrated. Zhongsho didn't dare to get close, which was why he first walked around the formation. While he skimmed past those treasures, he also destroyed the core of the formation, causing the restrictions to loosen. As long as there was a small gap, he would take the risk to try. It was also at this moment that the 12 bronze men finally reacted. Then, they took large steps and dashed towards Zhongsho. Their huge weight caused the ground to shake. Attacking together, they were really strong. A few giant fist shadows smashed towards Zhongsho. It was the mountain and river fist intent. Within one fist, there was a world of mountains and rivers, giving off a majestic aura. They also had great synergy, like they were one person. The 12 copper men pretty much sealed up all the space. Zhongsho's eyes squinted. He knew that going head-on was just asking to die. The sword shadow changed once more. The millions of sword shadows retracted, all of them forming into a single line, controlling fate, twisting cause and effect. Apart from time and space, he didn't use any other techniques. Using God to control the sword, using the sword to bring people along. Xiaoqun shuttled through the fist shadow copper men, drawing an incredible arc in the air. In the impossible, he broke out from the combined attacks of the 12 copper men. At this moment, his eyes were focused on where the Qin Emperor's coffin was. He had succeeded. The giant fists of the 12 copper men all smashed into the air. Even if they retracted their strength in time, it still caused the tomb to shake. Zhongsho drove the sword, breaking dozens of talismans and restrictions. Finally, a crack appeared in the core seal. At most 3 breaths of time, it could be said to be a flash. However, it was enough for him. His body was really swift as he sped through the air. Stepping in the air, he twisted space, causing his speed to multiply. Just as Zhongsho smashed in, the terracotta army in the distance started to move. Which thief dares to steal my emperor's tomb? Based on the law, you should be killed. As his words were spoken, a giant spear appeared. All of a sudden, he flew down from the sky and struck with his spear. Below where Zhongsho was standing, the ground was instantly suppressed by a huge force, forming a spindle-shaped hole. Zhongsho's skin was shaking up and down. The blood in his body was flowing in reverse. His entire body felt really uncomfortable. His pupils constricted, filled with shock. God Realm. There was actually a God Realm expert in the Qin Emperor's subtomb. Even if it gathered the strength of hundreds of thousands of terracotta army to have such a God Realm expert, it still suppressed Zhongsho. It was a suppression. In the future, there was no such person in the God Emperor virtual environment. At this moment, he felt really fortunate. He didn't act rashly and come to take the tomb too early. Waiting for a few years wasn't bad. If it was before the spirit realm, just the pressure of the spear would be enough to smash Zhongsho into pieces. With a low scoff, Zhongsho's body flashed and was indiscernible. Using his body to teleport and change, the spear shadow was unable to slash down to delay. Then, with a crazy speed, he forcefully kept everything around the coffin into the heaven and earth bag that he had prepared. It was like he swore that he wouldn't stop until he filled it up. In the second breath, when he kept 70% of the items here, the spear's shadow slashed down. The shadow of the halberd finally chopped down, almost within reach. The 12 bronze men also chased after him, cooperating with the huge shadow of the spear in an attempt to surround and kill him. Zhongsho knew that at this moment, he couldn't delay anymore. He couldn't be greedy, or he might even die. Without hesitation, he took out the book of Ian Extreme Life hidden in his soul ocean. A month ago, he definitely didn't dare to use this item and wasn't willing to show it in front of others. A month later, Long Ying went through his tribulation and became one of the 7 end realm experts of the cloud world. Although Zhongsho still had many worries, he wasn't as careful as before, with Long Ying as his support and Song Shengdao as his shield. Even if they knew that the book was in his hands, there weren't many who dared to attack. Moreover, there was no one else here. Even if he used it, no one would know. Countless spirit stones were thrown into the air, and in the blink of an eye, the entire area was completely locked down. Zhongsho's people sped out in the 3,000th of an instant when the light stopped, breaking away from the attacks of the giant spear. His heart was dripping blood. In just that moment, he had used up close to 50% of the mind stones he snatched from the tomb. As expected, I used the book of Ian Extreme Life, the time technique. It has the same theory as A.O. Kuhn's existence and destruction technique, and my cause and effect and fate technique. The stronger the presence, the more it consumed and the less it affected. It caused the spear to stop for a moment, and it consumed so much energy. The owner of the giant spear and the 12 copper men just struggled slightly before they broke free from the restrictions of time. Facing other experts, one naturally knew how useful the time technique was. However, for cultivators of their level, life and death were decided in the blink of an eye. A 3,000th of an instant could decide life and death. This book of Ian Extreme Life and the time and fate Daos were indeed extremely strong. What Zhongsho worried about was his own cultivation. Along with his strength increasing, would the same amount of mind stones be able to speed up his cultivation time decrease? Now, he could only hope that the treasures he snatched from near the coffin wouldn't disappoint him. At least they wouldn't be lower than the many mind stones he used so that he wouldn't suffer a loss. Dozens of talismans shot out along with the book of Ian Extreme Life to disturb the cause and effect and the flow of time here. This was to prevent others from using treasures like the light-reflecting mirror to trace the past and detect the presence of the book of Ian Extreme Life. Zhongsho glanced at the owner of the dagger axe. He saw a general standing on a bronze war chariot, his eyes spitting out flames as he looked over at him. He knew that this person was actually dead and had no thoughts, being restricted by the Qin Emperor's subtomb. Only a remnant soul was left protecting this place, similar to the 12 copper men. The evil arts of the Qin dynasty are quite impressive. Zhongsho was too lazy to bother, rising into the air and leaving. When the spear slashed over once more, he swiftly headed out of the tomb. Just at this moment, he heard an old laugh spread out from outside the tomb. So, it is the Qin Emperor's subtomb. Which cultivator is in the tomb? May I ask, what is the reason for taking it without asking in the territory of my Sha Yuan sect? In the next moment, Zhongsho's body shot out of the tomb. He saw a few streaks of light falling from the sky. Samaram's light also exchanged glances with the old man who spoke just now. Bloodsword Demon Lord. Chapter 796. Bloodsword Monster Lord. Right away, the spirit realm old man noticed Zhongsho's identity. After a cry of surprise, his face suddenly turned pale. He held his breath and didn't dare to make a sound. The streaks of light that were flying over from afar also paused for a moment. They showed themselves and stopped on the spot, not daring to get close. Zhongsho looked coldly at the old man from Sanyuan's sect. Thoughts flashed in his mind. In just an instant, he recalled the information about this Sanyuan sect. It wasn't one of the 3,000 Taoist sects, but a neutral sect between righteous and demon. This Qin Emperor subtomb was really within their territory. He didn't have any killing intent in his heart, as he wasn't an evil person. Since the old man recognized him and wasn't willing to be his enemy, then there was no need for him to attack. Laughing with a mysterious meaning, Zhongsho continued to charge up. The dagger axe below still chased up. However, when it reached 100,000 feet, the dagger axe shadow started to weaken. As expected, that god realm strength mostly relied on spiritual formations and restrictions. The moment he broke out of the formation, his strength would greatly decrease. With a thought rising up, Zhongsho sent out a sword light which charged down and clashed with the dagger axe shadow. Instantly, there was a sharp ring as energy spread all about. With just one strike, the crimson sword shadow knocked back the halberd and caused it to fall back to the ground. Within the Qin Emperor tomb, there was also a furious roar that was filled with unwillingness. Although they were furious, they couldn't charge out of the tomb. It was obvious that they couldn't do anything to Zhongsho and could only roar out. Zhongsho stood 100,000 feet in the air and looked around. He only felt that more and more spiritual lights were flying over from all directions. Grade 9 cultivators were the main ones, with 30% of them being spirit realm cultivators. Zhongsho shook his head and then casually walked towards the imperial city in the east. He didn't care at all and didn't care at all. Even if everyone knew that he had obtained most of the good things in the Qin Emperor's subtomb, he didn't have any intention of hiding. At this moment, he wished that someone would take the initiative to provoke him. Then, he would have an excuse to stay in the cloud world for a few more days. Within the borders of the Qian, no one could do anything to him. Now that they were hundreds of thousands of miles away from the Qian, even the Avicii throne couldn't help. Or would these people give it a try? Unfortunately, all the Taoism cultivators along the way avoided him like he was a snake or a scorpion. They didn't even dare to approach him. The other demonic Tao sects also had serious expressions and didn't dare to provoke them. The Buddhist and Kinzo sect had some friendly relations with him, so most of them nodded and saluted to express their goodwill. Zhongsho felt it was a pity. He had no choice but to give up on his wishful thinking. He drove the royal demon, Divine, shuttle far away from the vast ocean. The tomb had God realm experts, 300,000 terracotta warriors, and 12 copper puppets. It seemed like these spirit realm cultivators wouldn't be able to do anything to him. To successfully take out the remaining items within, the sects would have to find other ways to break it or ask celestial realm experts to work together. In the end, it would take several days to break the formation. If he was the vast habitat head of Tao Spirit and Heaven Demon, he would drag it on until he left the cloud world. This was why he didn't need to think about the remaining items. Anyways, a large half of the items were already in his hands, so there was nothing he wasn't satisfied with. In half a day, he traveled tens of thousands of miles. He stopped at a large city, roughly 2,000 miles away from the imperial city. Zhongsho shot out a swift talisman and swiftly flew towards Jin Buhui's residence in the imperial city. Then, he stopped the shuttle in midair and started to count his gains this time. Naturally, what he looked forward to the most were those pills. Zhongsho first opened the pill bottles one by one. In just a moment, joy appeared on his face. Before the Qin King's subtomb was opened by him, it was totally sealed. It pretty much formed a world of its own, merging with the essence. The spiritual energy was thick and maintained at 10,000 years ago. This was why these pills were all perfectly preserved. Only 20% of them had deteriorated. There were few types of pills, but all of them were top quality. Just these pills alone were 3 times more valuable than the Mind Stones he used before. Apart from that, there were many pill recipes preserved. The Fong family Qi cultivators during the Cloud Desolate era were pretty much wiped out after the Qin dynasty. After the Qin dynasty was wiped out, there were very few pill recipes left. Even pill fountain sect, such a large pill refining sect. Their pill refining techniques and pill recipes were slowly accumulated 13,000 years after the Qin dynasty. It didn't have much to do with the ancient cultivators. Zhongsho's lips curled up. Actually, these pills weren't that big of a deal. Although the price was shocking, Zhongsho didn't care too much. However, these pill recipes were really decent. If he brought them back to Xinyuan Irin, that righteous girl would definitely jump in joy. Following which Samurai's eyes flashed across an item. A weird expression flashed across his eyes. What is this item? The pills that were buried near the Qin Emperor's coffin were all kept in bottles, neatly placed in red gift boxes and placed on sandalwood racks. Only the few items that Zhongsho was looking at didn't match the rest. They were 10 iron balls, roughly the size of a water bucket. They were black in color and were perfectly round. Zhongsho didn't take a close look before this. At this moment, he probed and took one of the black iron balls in his hand. Only then did he notice that this ball was extremely heavy. It wasn't as heavy as a small Sumer mountain, but it was close to 100 million kilograms. The patterns on the iron ball seemed normal. However, if one looked closely, one would notice that this was a really exquisite spiritual formation. It seems to be black Xin purple hero iron. It was said that this item is tough to break. During the Cloud Desolate era, people often crafted it into a defensive artifact. If one could mix it with other spiritual metals and mix it well, in the hands of an expert blacksmith, it could be made into a celestial artifact. It was said that if one used it as armor, it could hide one's aura. During the Cloud Desolate era, many cultivators used this item to hide their cultivation, pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Little Gold, Hanshi, and the others were in for a treat. No, these two fellows actually dare to complain about me. Next, they should be punished by fasting. Zhongsho recalled while feeling weird. However, why is this item placed together with these pills? Oh, no. Since this item uses spiritual energy to hide one's aura, then wouldn't it be suitable to store pills? Speaking of which, these iron balls can be seen as pill bottles. What is inside that needs to use black Xin purple hero iron? Looking on with a stunned expression, Zhongsho gritted his teeth, using his soul power to lightly tap on the iron ball. Instantly, a ball of spiritual light spread out and numerous restrictions appeared outside of the iron ball. It was closely packed. There were a full 20 layers, only to see that there were numerous restrictions and the structure was really tight. Zhongsho looked on and then sucked in a deep cold breath. This was the formation protecting the pill within and was also a restriction lock. Unless one had the bloodline of the Qin Emperor or knew how to open it. Otherwise, if there was even the slightest mistake when breaking the formation, the pill hidden in the metal ball would be destroyed. Zhongsho rubbed his temples with a headache. He hesitated for a moment before he started to try. Not long ago, he had read thousands of scrolls. However, his attainments and formations were only slightly better than normal spirit realm cultivators. The reason why he had such confidence wasn't because of other reasons, but because of the cause and effect and fate Tao that he grasped. Activating his spirit energy, he drew the word luck in the air with his finger. He had changed his fate for the next 10 breaths of time, following which he twisted cause and effect to break the restrictions. Only then did he have a cause. His finger waved, allowing the cause and effect power to lead and break apart these restrictions one by one. The true qi in his body was being consumed intensely. Large beads of cold sweat appeared on Zhongsho's forehead, until Zhongsho felt that his energy meridians were close to drying up and couldn't continue. He thought that this attempt was destined to fail. The last layer of restrictions was finally opened. The iron ball was like an 8-leaf lotus that suddenly bloomed. As expected, a pill bottle appeared in front of Zhongsho's eyes. He grabbed it and used his spiritual sense to reach in, following which, Zhongsho's face alternated between green and white. After a long while, he sighed. It is actually the Heaven Essence Life Creation pill. Samurai's eyes shone, suddenly happy, suddenly worried, and in the end he felt a headache. A heaven essence life creation pill that can extend one's lifespan by 80 years. The Qin Emperor actually succeeded. Before the Qin Emperor died, there was no news at all. There were a total of 10 pills within the bottle. Even if the effects were removed, it could extend one's lifespan by 400 years. It was an iron ball. It was 100 heaven essence life creation pills. If it was the extreme purple pill in the Xiang King tomb, the few vast habitats would definitely get it. Then this heaven essence life creation pill was enough to make the entire cloud world, even all Saint Realm cultivators in this region, go crazy for it. In other words, if other people found out about this item, Zhongshou and even the entire Deqian would become the target of everyone, with no place to stand. Even Long Ying wouldn't be able to stop the greed of these Saint Realm cultivators. Thinking about how there were still 8 of these iron balls near the coffin that they weren't able to take away, Zhongshou cried out in pain. What was he going to do now? If he knew that this would happen, even if he got injured, he would have taken all these iron balls away. It would be best if he didn't leave a single one. With the current situation, as long as one person noticed the secrets within the Black Xian Purple Hero Iron, Zhongshou would be in danger. Speaking of which, it was really weird. It was just an unimportant subtomb, so why would there be such things? If it wasn't for him confirming that there weren't the 12 copper men, Zhongshou would have thought that this was the real tomb of the Qin Emperor. At this moment, Zhongshou only felt that the pill bottle in his hand was scalding hot, and he really wanted to throw it all away. As expected, misfortune is a blessing in disguise, and a blessing in disguise. Suddenly, Zhongshoxin's heart moved once more. The only way was to destroy the remaining few iron balls when he took them out. Even if he only disturbed the seals and destroyed the spiritual pills within, it was okay. Without hesitation, he tossed out a star-shining talisman. Although Mingyu had left, she was definitely near the cloud world. The moment this talisman was used, she would be able to rush back. Then, Zhongshou looked at the Black Xian Purple Hero iron balls in front of him with a frown. Although he was a member of the Cang Xingdao, the teachings of the Cang Xingdao emphasized the freedom of one's own existence. These things couldn't be left to the sect to deal with. Chapter 797. This Heaven Essence Life Creation Pill was something that Zhongshou wouldn't use unless he had no choice. However, the other people around him might not be the same. He estimated that the effects of 5 pills for 350 years would be the best. The extra ones would be a waste. In other words, 1 pill bottle could be used by 2 people. Xinyuan Yiren and Ruoshui, Chu Shui and Kong Yao, Zhong Yuan and Rinbua. Also, his parents might need it too. Xian Yunlan and that crazy woman. Forget it. He would prepare some for them. Every time he thought about 2 to 4 names, Zhongshou would pull 1 iron ball into his sleeves. In just a blink of an eye, the remaining 9 iron balls were all kept by him. Looking at the empty ground, Zhongshou's head was covered in sweat. Thinking about it, Zhongshou still tossed out the 5 iron balls. He allowed them to roll around on the floor of the Royal Demon Shuttle. One couldn't be too greedy. Thinking about it carefully, was it really good to leave so many Heaven Essence Life Creation pills to them? The path of cultivation was to be courageous, to fight for life in the midst of death. Without pressure, without worrying about lifespan, it wasn't a good thing. Moreover, having too many Heaven Essence Life Creation pills in his hands was a source of trouble. It was best to leave some in reserve. On the contrary, the common people's path had these pills, and who knows how many lives they could save. It could also increase the strength of the Taoist faction. Although he thought that way in his heart, there were still 4 iron balls hidden in his heaven and earth bag. Moments later, the space in front of Zhongshou twisted. An illusionary image directly pierced through the spiritual barrier outside of the shuttle and appeared in front of Zhongshou. It was Mingyu. Her brows were furrowed as she looked at Zhongshou with a weird expression. That star-shining talisman is precious. My Cang Shangdao has over 10 Saint Realm cultivators. In a year, I can only make 5 to 6. Junior Marshal brother, it's best if you don't use it so easily. Zhongshou pursed his lips. No wonder Mingyu misunderstood that he was playing around. Ever since he went through the tribulation, he had no opponent in the cloud world. Apart from the imperial capital, he could do whatever he wanted no matter where he went. Indeed, there was no need for the star-shining talisman. Without explaining, Zhongsho gestured with his eyes and looked down. The blooming black mystic purple hero steel lotus and the medicine bottle within it. Mingyu frowned at first, then casually took the medicine bottle in her hand. Because it was an avatar formed by gathering the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, it was impossible to see the change in its expression. But after an instant, the figure suddenly twisted, and the avatar was almost unable to hold on and shattered. Heaven Origin Life Creation Pill. His voice was raised by an octave, and then a huge pressure came pressing down. It wasn't targeting Zhongsho, but because Mingyu was distracted and couldn't control herself. Zhongsho could feel that Mingyu herself was breaking space and heading over. He couldn't help but sigh. As expected, it was a pill that could greatly increase lifespan. Even Tsang Xingdao, who had the mysterious Golden Life book, couldn't remain calm. Mingyu's avatar also slowly calmed down. Where did you get this pill from? The Qin Emperor's subtomb is in a vast ocean 30,000 miles away. Since he even gave her the pill, Zhongsho naturally wouldn't hide where it came from. Moreover, he would need to borrow Mingyu's strength. Qin Emperor? That first emperor was able to refine such a pill? Then Mingyu scoffed coldly. What a joke. With such a spiritual pill, he still couldn't keep his life. As expected, one can't be overbearing for long. Hearing those words, Zhongsho couldn't help but think about himself. Speaking of which, it was weird. He had been a Qian ruler for so long, but his lifespan wasn't affected at all. Although it was due to the 9-layer golden pagoda and the Avicii Emperor race suppressing him, this situation was really weird. Legend had it that the 3 ancient saint emperors could all cultivate and were all end realm. However, because they were fighting against the invasion of the outer region, they all fell. Was he really the Saint King? Kong Rue and that Zhongsho, who was either Fan Ming or Yuan Jing, didn't lie to him. Mingyu looked at the lotus made from black Xian purple hero iron, as well as the 5 iron balls that were still rolling around. The shock in her eyes grew thicker. All of these are? Zhongsho nodded his head. They were all taken from the Qin Emperor's subtomb. The same style, the same restrictions, the same materials. As for whether or not there were Heaven Essence Life Creation pills or other pills, I don't know. Oh right, within the subtomb, there were 8 of these iron balls that I couldn't take out. At this moment, Mingyu's main body had rushed over and replaced the incarnation. The way she looked at Zhongsho was a little weird. To be able to notice such things, she really didn't know what to say to this junior brother. To Zhongsho, she really didn't know if it was a blessing or a curse. However, to be able to notice and inform the sect, it should be a blessing, right? Since junior brother Zhong joined Tsang Xingdao, the sect situation suddenly stopped. Naturally, she knew what Zhongsho's last few words meant. Naturally, he had to deal with the aftermath. Mingyu waved her sleeves and kept the few iron balls. She didn't hesitate. I will make a trip to the Qin Emperor's subtomb and deal with it properly. This item is a life-saving rain for me, Tsang Xingdao. You are also Tsang Xingdao's second-generation direct disciple, so I won't thank you. You can read all the books in the technique and technique teaching floor. She paused, and then Mingyu shook her head. No. No matter how secretive the walls of the world were, there would always be some traces of the cat's feet that would leak out. You can quickly leave the cloud world and get out of this matter. Within the vast habitat, all the books in the technique and technique teaching floor have a copy. After you leave the cloud world, you can wait for junior sister Lingbo to send these copies over. Once this matter was leaked out, it would cause a huge storm. Even Tsang Xingdao wouldn't be able to take it, which was why they had to be really careful. Zhongsho smiled when he heard that. This senior brother, Mingyu, really knew his intentions. He didn't have much time in the cloud world. Even if he had the rights, he didn't have time to look. It was best if there was a copy. After Mingyu finished speaking, she was about to leave. Before she left, she couldn't help but ask curiously, "How many do you have now?" It wasn't convenient for Zhongsho to reply, so he could only avoid Mingyu's gaze and look elsewhere, laughing without any sincerity. Mingyu shook her head slightly and didn't continue to ask. Like before, he directly tore open space within the royal demon god shuttle and escaped to the outside world. At this moment, his eyes shone brightly. This remaining heavenly essence life creation pill, he was bent on obtaining it. He also thought to himself that this Qin Emperor subtomb had over 100 heaven essence life creation pills. Then, how many were there within the true tomb? Then he shook his head. Although the heaven essence life creation pill was only a low-grade celestial pill and the materials were easy to find, it was really hard to refine. Even when Great Qin unified the cloud world at the peak of the spiritual wave, how many could there be? There had to be a reason for placing this pill in the subtomb. Chapter 798. After Mingyu left, Zhongsho started to clean up what he got from the Qin Emperor's subtomb. Beside the coffin, what he got was not only the iron balls and pills. There were also many other good things. Counting carefully, there were thousands of mind stones which were all Xian grade high grade. Apart from that, there were 2 to 3 magical treasures that were not bad. A jade scepter, a golden robe, a jade crown, they were all emperor-style items. As for the other miscellaneous items, there were even more. However, there wasn't a single one of them that was as valuable as the Heaven Essence Life Creation Pill. There's actually a pill recipe for the Heaven Essence Life Creation Pill. What is the Qin Emperor's intention in making such arrangements? Zhongsho couldn't understand, following which he frowned and sighed. Tough. If I die in the future, I will have to build a tomb. In the end, there will most probably be people who rob tombs like I did today and rob my family clean. What should I do then? I remember that 10,000 years later, none of those emperor tombs were safe. Thinking about that, Zhongsho shook his head. What was he thinking about? The peak of the sword path would allow one to live a long life. If one day he really died, he would instruct his descendants that it was best not to bury items with him. His thoughts ran wild until a message talisman flew back. Only then did Zhongsho keep all these messy thoughts, mocking himself. It was that guy. He had already arrived, descending from the royal demon god shuttle. As expected, he saw Jin Buhui galloping over. He didn't know what had happened, but his originally plump body had actually slimmed down quite a bit, revealing a vigorous, heroic spirit. He was wearing a grade 4 official robe. It was obvious that this fellow had a smooth career in the Taishang dynasty. Looking at Zhongsho, Jin Buhui's face was filled with surprise. Zhongsho smiled and went up to welcome him. A jug of wine, 2 wine cups, 7 to 8 dishes. Beside the road, within a wine shop, Zhongsho and Jin Buhui sat opposite each other and drank. Those dishes were all ordinary and not delicious at all. Only the wine was given to him by Lei Dong, Zhongsho's treasure collection, so it was still acceptable. This tavern was also extremely simple and crude, with no ventilation on all 4 sides. However, since they were close friends, they didn't care about such things. I never would have thought that a greedy fatty like you would actually be able to become a 4th-rank high official one day. Zhongsho drank his wine while carefully looking at Jin Buhui, especially his official robe. He's actually an imperial censor, a deputy imperial censor. He's really something. A 4th-grade imperial censor assistant minister was already one of the highest-ranking officials in Taishang. This was different from his Deqian, which ruled over only a few prefectures. The Taishang ruled over dozens of prefectures and hundreds of provinces, with an area of 70,000 li from north to south and 100,000 li from east to west. The assistant censor had the responsibility to impeach and supervise the millions of officials in the Shang dynasty. This position isn't what I want. Let's not talk about it. If I had a choice, I would rather cultivate in the sect and have peace. Sighing, Jin Buhui smiled. Who would have thought that in just 2 years, Zhongsho's cultivation would reach the peak of the spirit realm? You are invincible in the Gaia world. Every time my senior and junior brothers talk about you, they are filled with respect. He said in a depressed tone, I heard that you're going to leave the cloud world? Lei Dong left, and now you're going to leave too. My few senior brothers have all left. Now, I'm the only one left in the cloud world. Every time I think about it, I feel really lonely. It's only 20 years. I don't believe that you will be lonely. Zongsho broke out into a laugh and shook his head. Then, his expression turned serious. I heard that half a year ago, you wrote 3 memorials. One was to impeach the aristocratic families and nobles, who were breaking the law and no one could stop them. There were even people who colluded with the local officials to privately raise their own troops. The second one was to impeach the aristocratic families for taking control of the imperial examinations, causing the country's talent selection ceremony to be useless and making it difficult for poor people to become officials. The third one suggested the imperial court to change the rewards of titles. From now on, they wouldn't give land and would only use money. So, I wanted to ask, have you gone crazy and don't want to live anymore? The moment these words were said, the atmosphere within the wine shop instantly became really depressed. You really came for this matter. Jean Buhue kept silent for a moment and then mocked himself. He looked at the robe of the grade 4 imperial censor on his body. If it wasn't for these few memorials, how do you think someone like me who barely got into the top 2 could get the position of a grade 4 high official? This is the reward that His Majesty is giving me. You are also pushed to the front of the storm. Zongsho's eyes shone brightly as he looked opposite him. Do you know the outcome? If that Taishang Emperor wins, it is okay. But if he has no choice but to compromise with those aristocratic families or lose, you, Jean Buhue, will be thrown out to calm everyone down. Even if you win, do you have the confidence to avoid the attacks of those aristocratic families? These huge families have operated in the central continent for thousands of years. Their power is intertwined and numerous interests entangled. Do you know how many people within Taishang hate you to the bone? It wasn't a possibility, but a certainty. Taishang's Yuanqing emperor was a rare wise ruler. Unfortunately, he didn't have long to live. At this moment, although the battle was intense, there would be a time when the aristocratic families would stop and make peace. Based on what he knew, because of this internal conflict, the Taishang's strength was wasted and the aristocratic families were at odds with one another. Under the attacks of the outer region alien races, they swiftly collapsed and caused chaos. In the following tens of years, they relied on Kong Yao to support them. However, this future pillar, the unparalleled famous general who won all battles, was dug out by him. The Jean Buhue in his memory was really smart. He didn't look like a person who would take risks for others. This kind of thing should be avoided like the plague. Someone instructed me to do so. I didn't do it willingly. At this moment, Jean Buhue laughed bitterly. Moreover, I really don't like these aristocratic families. If one searched the history books, one would know that these 10,000 years, if it wasn't for these families causing chaos in the region, the Central Cloud continent wouldn't be in chaos every 1,000 years. Every time, the people wouldn't be able to make a living and billions would die. In the past, I didn't like how the imperial court suppressed my sections. Only after entering the court did I know that they had no choice. Sects, aristocratic families, and even those factionless cultivators are all thieves of the country. The worry on Zongsho's face grew thicker and thicker. His eyes were cold. You didn't do it willingly. Did that Yuanqing emperor force you? Jean Buhue avoided the question and didn't reply, expressionlessly saying, it shouldn't have reached such a level. Normal censors wouldn't dare to do those memorials. Only I, Jean Buhue, have Haoshuan's sect as my shield. Only then do I have the rights. With the sect backing me, even if something happens in the future, it wouldn't be too much. At most, you'll just remove me from my position. Isn't that what I want? Zongsho opened his mouth and wanted to say that when the time came, even Haoshuan's sect might not be able to protect him. In the end, he forcefully suppressed it and kept silent. Actually, what was done, and Jean Buhue had already made up his mind. It was useless to persuade him now. However, he felt really uneasy in his heart and also had a bad feeling. In the end, he could only sigh. He raised the wine flask and poured another cup for Jean Buhue. If you have no choice, you can quickly head to Deqian to hide. Within my country, no matter who it is, they won't be able to do anything to you. Jin Buhui instantly laughed out loud. Haoshuan's sect could be his shield. The Qian Zhongshou, the bloodsore monster lord who suppressed a world, weren't they also one of the things he relied on? The two of them continued to speak, but they didn't mention the Taishan court as well as that aristocratic family matter. They just chatted casually, talking about everything under the sun. 40% of the time was spent on Zhongshou teaching Jin Buhui martial arts and spells, solving some of his questions and problems. Zhongshou felt that although this fellow was still stubborn about cultivation and money, he was distracted. However, he was more or less distracted and paid attention to the various parts of Great Shan. If not, his martial path improvement wouldn't be so slow. Based on what Jin Buhui said, since he was an official, as the Imperial Censor, a grade 4 lower high official, he had to be worthy of his position. In that case, he had to live up to his status and do something for the common people. After all, he was a Confucian disciple. In this chaotic world, he couldn't just focus on himself. The two of them chatted casually for a day until dawn before Jin Buhui said goodbye and left. He rode that grade 5 mount and flew back to the Imperial City. He was an official, and if he rushed back now, he could still participate in the daily Taishan morning court. Zhongshou sat alone in the wine shop and looked opposite in a daze. He knew that his friend was falling step by step into the abyss, but he was unable to pull him out. Such frustration and anxiousness couldn't be described with words. In the next moment, Zhongshou looked to the side. "Since you are here, why don't you come in? Hiding at the side and eavesdropping, isn't that a little beneath your identity?" The moment these words were said, two people appeared outside. Two figures appeared outside the tavern. One of them was dressed like a Confucian scholar. The other was an old Taoist. Ruler has such sharp senses. Without any awkwardness of being seen through, the Taoist walked over confidently and bowed towards Zhongshou. "I am Zhongshuan, greetings to Qian ruler." The person in front of him, regardless of whether it was his status as the ruler of a country or his identity as the disciple of Saint Dragon Shadow, was worthy of his respect. Zhongshou's lips curled up in disdain. What sharp senses! If a God Realm cultivator wanted to hide something, how could he notice it? This Zhongshuan was simply too close. Apart from that, he was probing. "So, it is the Taishan Grand Teacher, Zhongshuan." Lazy to bother, Zhongshou directly asked, "You heard what I said just now?" This person definitely came earlier than when he sensed him. "Of course, I heard it." Zhongshuan nodded his head. Ruler is the ruler of a country and is pretty much invincible in the cloud world. To actually come outside of our Taishan Imperial City, I have to be careful. Ruler, please forgive me. Zhongshou smiled, his eyes squinting and flashing a dangerous glow. "Since you heard it, that's good. Jin Buhui is my best friend. We are very close." "Grand Teacher, please tell your Majesty that no matter what you are planning, you can't hurt him at all. If not, I won't let this matter rest." Preposterous. Chapter 799. Preposterous. The moment Zhongshou said this, the green shirt Confucian scolded. "You are just a small barbaric country ruler, and you dare to threaten the ruler of a great country? How arrogant and rude. Could it be that the monarch wants to start a war between the two countries?" He said coldly, "Jin Buhui is your Majesty's subject. Not to mention, everything he did was voluntary. Even if His Majesty wanted him to die, he had no choice. How could you have a say in this? Buhui is working for the people and sacrificing himself for the country. That fits the Confucian faction. Even if he dies, he will get what he wants, sacrificing himself for the righteous. Since you are his friend, you shouldn't interfere from the side." Killing intent rose up in Zhongshuan's heart as he looked at this person. Then he directly asked Zhongshuan, "Who is this old man?" "Hanlin Academy Scholars Washin." Zhongshuan explained expressionlessly. His expression was solemn. "He is one of the great Confucians of our dynasty, from the Confucian faction. He is also Imperial Censor Jin's teacher." The so-called head teacher was the relationship between the examiner and the examiner during the imperial examinations. Zhongsho didn't care, smiling without any warmth. So that is the case. Then, what is the problem if I kill him here? His words were filled with killing intent, extremely cold and dark. Zhongshuan and Zhuoxin were startled when they heard this, like they were really surprised. Zhongshuan reacted really quickly, shaking his head and laughing bitterly. Scholar Zhuoxin is the minister that His Majesty wants. Saint Venerable Zhu Zi also praises him a lot. Scholar Zhuoxin has always been direct. If he has offended you, please give face to Zhongshuan and don't blame him. If it was just a Deqian country ruler, naturally, he didn't need to worry about him, and he wasn't worth him doing that. However, behind this person was an end realm. In the cloud world, there were only 7 Saint Venerables. It wasn't that the Taishang didn't have the strength to fight back, but there was no need to make such a strong enemy. When Zhongsho wiped out dozens of Taoist faction sects alone, it was already terrifying. At this moment, he was even more likely to win. Zhuoxin's body trembled in anger. He had never seen such an arrogant and bold person in his life. Within the Taishang kingdom, within 2,000 miles of the imperial capital, they actually dared to threaten to kill him, an important official of the Taishang kingdom. If it wasn't for the fact that he was also the ruler of a country, he wouldn't have been able to do anything. He did not pay tribute, nor did he become a subject. Otherwise, he would immediately curse him as a traitor. Although he was targeted by Zhongsho's killing intent, Xin was not afraid at all. He laughed coldly. Everyone says that the monarch is ruthless. That's true. You can't reason with him, so you want to kill him. Xin is right here. If you want to kill him, you can take his head. Zhongsho held his breath. He was helpless against such people. He was speechless. He believed that he was in the right and was not afraid of death. If he made a move, he would be making himself known as an evil demon. Thus, he shook his head and said, "If the monarch wants the subject to die, the subject has no choice but to die. In your eyes, that is a matter of course. To me, even if I am the ruler of a country, I don't have the power to decide the life and death of people. Actually, if all subjects were like that, it would be a sad thing for the ruler. It is good to serve the people, but if you are used by others and end up being betrayed, losing your reputation, then that is not right. To follow the heavens and destroy the desires of people." He wasn't willing to argue with this old man and didn't allow him to retort. Zhongsho stood up and turned to Zhongshuan. "Grand Teacher, please pass those words to Yuanqin Emperor. Zhongsho, am a man of my words. I will definitely do what I say." After he said that, he flew into the air toward the royal demon god shuttle that was hanging in the air. Xian's face was ashen white. He suddenly shouted out once more, "Ruler, please wait. There is one thing that I need you to explain to me. Your foreign subject has heard that within the borders of your esteemed country, the situation is reversed. Spies are in control of the government. The scholar officials are all under the control of the ants, and there is no sense of propriety. Is that true? What is the reason? I heard that you didn't ask about politics for 3 years and didn't go to court. You actually have the time to bother about my Taishang matters. Aren't you afraid that your country will be wiped out?" Zhongsho frowned and wasn't willing to reply. In the end, he had an idea. The most important thing about Confucianism was etiquette. He purposely wanted to discuss this with Xian and laughed out loud. "That is true. I am too lazy and don't want to bother about politics. I wonder if this reason is enough? You say that etiquette doesn't exist, but I want to do that. What can you do to me? Are those officials and officials born to be better than others?" At this moment, Taishang is in chaos and people are displaced. My Donglin is a land of peace and bliss. As a minister, you don't need to reflect on yourself. What face do you have to scold me? He was too lazy to bother, driving the royal demon god shuttle and directly charging out of the world region. Xian wanted to ask more, but Zhongsho was nowhere to be seen. His expression couldn't help but become even uglier. He snorted coldly and said, "This person is just like the rumors. He is a heretic, evil monarch." Although their way of doing things was slightly different from common people's path, it was similar. There has to be a connection between the two. if His Majesty can calm down the aristocratic families in 10 years. I will persuade His Majesty to conquer Donglin. Wipe out this evil country. If we don't care about it, one day it will cause chaos in the central continent. I really don't understand. Why would those ignorant barbarians support such an evil demon? Zhongshuan frowned and didn't speak, deep in thought. Just now, he actually couldn't see through Zhongshu's fate and luck. It was like he was looking at a piece of white paper. He couldn't even notice a single mark. It was obvious that someone had used a technique to cover the secrets of the heavens. There was also a magical artifact suppressing. It should be the necklace on Zhongshu's chest. Although Long Ying was strong and was a saint venerable, he didn't have such ability. The only possibility was Kong Rue. What did that former imperial astrologer of Great Shang want to hide? He subconsciously felt that this matter was really important to both him and the Taishan. However, at this moment, he couldn't do anything about Zhongshu. Could he attack him? Even if he didn't bother about Long Ying, if this person didn't enter the imperial city, he didn't have full confidence in keeping him here. He couldn't help but sigh. His Majesty chasing away Kong Yao and Kong Rue was the biggest loss to the Taishan in these few years. However, Zhongshuan had a huge part to play in this matter, and it was really regrettable. Out of the Cloud World and into the World River, Zhongshu first sent the pill recipes back to Gantian Mountain. As expected, in just a moment, Xinyuan Irin returned with a message talisman filled with joy. The words in the talisman were pretty much incoherent. Zhongshu's lips curled up. After these recipes were sent back, Xinyuan Irin would probably have to stay in the pill room and not come out for a few months. He couldn't help but worry about the baby in her stomach. It seemed like he still had to send a message to his father-in-law and mother-in-law. When Xinyuan Irin was refining pills, only Xinyuan Tong could restrict him. In the end, Irin's message talisman ended, and she said that she wanted him to help her collect various pill recipes in the outer region. If there were better ones, she could wait for Zhongshu to return to reward him. At that time, no matter what position he was in, he could do whatever he wanted. As long as he liked it, he could do anything. Zhongshu instantly had 2 streams of blood flowing from his nose. Any position he wanted? He could do whatever he wanted? Was this still that righteous girl? What nonsense was she saying? He couldn't help but have many thoughts in his mind. Countless dirty and erotic thoughts and images appeared in his mind. He couldn't help but groan. When did his Irin become so bad? He knew that at this moment he couldn't return to the Cloud World and would immediately deal with it. However, she had to send such a tempting talisman. Was this what it meant to be fearless? He solemnly kept the talisman and was prepared to use it as evidence in the future. He gritted his teeth. This righteous girl would regret what she did sooner or later. He waited in the void for a moment, and, as expected, not long later he saw Shui Lingbo's light flying over. The two of them didn't have much to say to each other. After handing over the copies of the cultivation methods and secret techniques, they separated once more. When Shui Lingbo left, she wanted to say something but stopped. She looked at Zhongshu with a weird expression, like she wanted to ask why he was able to get such special treatment for no reason. She took away all these precious copies? Naturally, Zhongshu wouldn't say that not long ago he obtained a full 100 Heaven Essence Life Creation pills from the Qin Emperor's subtomb. It wasn't that he didn't trust Shui Lingbo, but it was better if fewer people knew about such a secret. Those End Realm and Saint Realm experts had indiscernible abilities. Some people who cultivated special techniques could deduce the past, see through cause and effect, and predict the future. Moreover, no one knew whether or not this place was safe and whether or not there were Saint Realm spiritual senses around. The more this matter involved, the more dangerous it would be. After sending Shui Lingbo away, Zhongshu looked around once more. With his cultivation, he couldn't see through the Cloud World. He could only look at the deep World River, his eyes filled with spiritual light. At this moment, he felt really lonely, all alone in this world. Then, he broke into a laugh. Although he left, Ruo Shui would accompany him. There were also 6 spaceships, a full 300,000 Qian troops. As time was too rushed, they weren't prepared. They would only leave the cloud world a month later to meet up with him. As for Ruashue, she wasn't at spirit realm and couldn't walk outside of the void world for a long time. Even if Zhongsho had the royal demon god shuttle, he might not be able to protect her. It was best for her to follow the cloud ship fleet. After keeping all the books, Zhongsho drove the shuttle and flew into the distance. After passing through the two worlds, he felt his body relax. Those spiritual wills from the cloud world that had been faintly sensing him retreated one after another. Zhongsho scoffed coldly. He knew that if these people didn't personally see him leave, they wouldn't be at ease. It seemed like at this moment, there would definitely be a fierce battle for the Qin Emperor's subtomb. Just at this moment, a spiritual sense spread over from the void. It was Mingyu. Just a few words, and she said that she was fine. Zhongsho's lips curled up. With that, all the conflicts within the cloud world had nothing to do with him. He immediately sped up. Based on the sect records, there was a cultivator market not far from here. Chapter 800. He traveled within the World River, following the directions recorded in the travels of those cultivators by Song Xingdao. Zhongsho used a full 10 days to arrive outside of a world. Using his spiritual sense, he was able to find out where this market was. This realm only has a circumference of 200,000 feet. There is actually such a small world in this region. How magical. Although the worlds in the future were connected and all sorts of information about the outer region was spread all over the network. However, for Zhongsho, looking at the outer region worlds was like looking at flowers in the fog. He wasn't too clear about it. Till date, he hadn't stepped out of the cloud world, much less come into contact with the cultivator markets in the outer region. If only the 800 worlds under the Liu family were all like this, Zhongsho thought about it, and then gave out a self-mocking laugh as he stepped into the world barrier. In the next moment, he felt an abundant amount of spiritual energy charged towards him. Although this world was small, the amount of spiritual energy was much more than the current cloud world. Be it martial path and spiritual cultivation, medicine gardens, pill refining, and artifact crafting, it was the best place. It was also because of this that many factionless cultivators in the region chose this place as a cultivation place. Then, many people came over because of its reputation, exchanging items. Over time, this small kiliacosm, known as the Tianfeng world, became a large-scale market. Not only spirit realm and celestial realm cultivators, but even some saint realm venerables would appear here. Zhongsho looked out, and as expected, it was a square sky and square land. This place was filled with all sorts of buildings, closely packed together and pretty much filling up the entire space. Many of them had the style of the cloud world, but most of them were totally different. They had weird shapes and looked really weird, making Zhongsho feel really uncomfortable. This place is close to the cloud world, just tens of worlds away. However, the cultivators from the cloud world only made up 30% of them. As expected, there are numerous cultivators in the outer region. Zhongsho sensed with his spiritual sense. There were over 3,000 spirit realm cultivators and hundreds of celestial realm cultivators. He immediately retracted his spiritual sense, knowing that this was the most basic form of courtesy in the outer realm. Casually probing into other people's real situation. Either one had ulterior motives or was impolite. If they were more hot-tempered, they might even directly attack and kill those people. However, it is weird that there aren't many cultivators in the cloud world. Why were there close to 100 Saint Realm experts and 7 End Realm experts? Including the few that died during the Cloud Desolate era, there were more than 10 of them. Is it really because of the heaven-splitting treasure? The place where Zhongsho appeared was the intersection of this market. As he strolled inside, he looked around with great interest while letting his imagination run wild. For the time being, he did not lack spiritual artifacts or elixirs. In fact, he did not have any expectations for this place. He had come here purely out of curiosity. Naturally, it would be even better if he could gain something from it. What he wanted the most was an item to cross space and cross worlds. Although his royal demon god shuttle was good, unfortunately, It didn't have all the parts and he didn't know where to find them. Now that he used this item, he felt that it was not enough. Many times, it was not even as fast as his sword-driving flight. He noticed that not only were there buildings, but even the people were weirdly shaped. Zhongsho personally saw a few insect-like alien race people walking around on the streets. Furthermore, he didn't have any limbs beside him. Their entire bodies were hanging in the air, and a few tentacles reached out. It was like an octopus with 8 tentacles. If it wasn't for this person's eyes shining with an intelligent glow and abundant spiritual energy, he wouldn't have been able to talk. He was able to talk to people around without any hindrance. He nearly thought that this person was an underwater beast, although the human race of the cloud world actually came from beasts. However, in comparison, Hanshi was more like an intelligent race than he was. He really didn't know how such an existence cultivated. The world was really huge, and there were all sorts of weird things. No matter how weird he was, the people around didn't care. They seemed to be used to his image. At most, they took a look and found it weird why such a person with no cultivation would come to this Tianfeng world. However, shortly after, these people wouldn't care anymore. In this region, there were many methods to hide one's cultivation. For Zhongsho to be like this wasn't anything weird. At most, his secret technique was a little more outstanding. There were such things every year in this Tianfeng world. To be able to travel in the World River, one had to be at least Spirit Realm or a Peak Heaven Realm with exceptional strength, which was a grade 9 cultivator in the Cloud world. In this Heaven Settlement world, apart from the descendants of the previous generations of cultivators, who would be ordinary cultivators, there are actually night demons? Samurai looked at dozens of dark-skinned men with wings on their backs. They were exactly the same as the night demons in his memory. However, their situations were good, like they were hired to work in some shops. Their cultivations were only grade 4 to grade 5, but they were doing hard work. They were all holding heavy pestles and hammering herbs. I heard that although the night demon race was born with grade 2 strength, the race forbade martial arts. Normal people couldn't come into contact with martial arts. Only those who were born strong and were chosen to enter the army, making the night demon blood oath to be loyal to the night demon emperor race, could cultivate martial arts and spells. Although the night demon race occupied hundreds of worlds, most of the people in the race didn't benefit from it. As expected, the rumors were true. He looked around like he was looking at flowers on horseback. He only felt that everywhere was really surprising. However, an hour later, Zhongsho retracted his thoughts. He walked into a weird building that looked like a beehive. This was an artifact crafting pavilion known as the Windsheet Building. Although the style of the building was different from the Cloud World, the words that could be used were similar to the Cloud World language. This place wasn't in the bustling city and was really secluded. There weren't many guests and it was really cold. It was obvious that it was newly opened and didn't have much of an old aura. The reason why Zhongsho came here was because he saw that the few magical treasures and armors displayed here were all decent and could be called top quality. Luckily, although the owner of this place wasn't from the Cloud World, he was similar to the people of the Cloud World, no different at all. It was a man in his 30s, his face was sallow, the glow in his eyes was retracted, filled with an ancient aura. After he came out, he expressionlessly looked at Zhongsho and then directly shook his head. If you want to buy large amounts of armor, you can head to the weapon viewing room not far away. I don't have enough people here and don't do large amounts of business. Zhongsho's brows rose up. He didn't know what was going on. Why do you say that? I really don't understand. Why do you think that I want to buy large amounts of armor the moment we meet? Isn't that so? The middle-aged man was surprised, sizing up Zhongsho. Although you have a secret technique to cover it, your aura is still filled with energy. If you aren't the ruler of a country, then you are the crown prince of country. This fierce aura is also revealed on the outside. You must have killed many people in your life. Didn't you come to Tianfeng World to buy weapons and armor? Zhongsho exclaimed in surprise. The person in front of him actually had such ability. In the Cloud World, there were only a few people who had such ability. Since he was good at divination, then why did he want to do this artifact crafting business? He felt more at ease. Anyone who is good at divination wouldn't be weak in terms of formations. He didn't know how good his artifact crafting skills were, but he didn't need to worry about formations within artifacts. However, to be able to purchase large amounts of spiritual artifacts and armor in this Tianfeng world was really surprising. He had to remember that although the blacksmiths he was supporting in Gantian Mountain had slowly matured and were being used by Kongqi's sect, who knows when he would need to use such weapons? I really didn't come for that. Smiling expressionlessly, Zhongsho took out his royal demon god shuttle. Naturally, he had shrunk it to the size of a palm and placed it in front of him. Can Grandmaster perfect this shuttle? I don't dare to be called Grandmaster. My surname is Shun, and I am the owner of this Wenchi building. You could just call me Building Head. After that middle-aged man said this, he picked up the shuttle and took a close look. A moment later, his expression changed and shock appeared in his eyes. What a treasure! Although the structure is really simple, its uses are much better than universal-grade magical artifacts. It fits together perfectly the workmanship of the heavens, turning complicated into simple. There isn't any excess. Looking at the crafting method, it should be the work of the Mahists of the Cloud World. As expected, you are from the Cloud World. I heard that another end realm appeared in your world and shocked a region. How amazing! After he finished speaking, he shook his head. This item is made from Tiansang's spiritual wood. Although I have some storage here, I don't have any of them. I have some inventory, but my crafting skills are a little weak. This shuttle is missing dozens of parts, and at least a quarter can't be completed. The remaining parts are far from the original. So you can't do it? Zhongsho frowned, but he wasn't disappointed. At least from what this person said, it was stronger than Kongqi's sect. Based on what that Tianqi said, before the 7th generation ancestor returned, it was impossible to do it. Speaking of which, he could only search for another item to travel through space. No, the middle-aged man smiled. I can help you craft some parts that can be dismantled to raise its speed and defense. In the future, when you find the real parts, you can just replace them. However, you need to be quick. If not only will the parts one craft be damaged, even the artifact formation of the shuttle will be destroyed. However, to repair this item, it is worth a lot, comparable to 3 magical artifacts. Zhongsho's eyes lit up. He felt like there was a light at the end of the tunnel. This method is very appropriate. That's how it is. Building Head Shun, please be quick. Money isn't a problem. That middle-aged man nodded slightly, waving his sleeves and keeping the shuttle. He said expressionlessly, then, 10 days later, you can come and take it back. This item is worth a lot, so there is no need for a deposit. After he said this, he picked up the teacup to send him away. Zhongsho didn't get up and leave. Instead, he took out a few more iron balls from his sleeves. A total of 5, the size of a water bucket. It was the black Xian purple hero iron. At the start, Mingyu only took the pill bottle of the one that was opened, but Taichio kept it. As for the remaining 4, Zhongsho naturally took out the spiritual pills within. Chapter 801. So, it is black Xian purple hero iron. It is really rare to see such a quantity. With just one look, the middle-aged man recognized what it was. What was even more astonishing was the intricacy of the arrangement inside. It was equivalent to an excellent magic treasure in itself. However, since the formation was broken, then the items within were most probably taken out. What item is this guest prepared to refine this black Xian purple hero iron into? A knife that can hide one's tracks, a light armor that also needs to be able to hide one's aura. Apart from that, I also need a defensive magical treasure that grade 9 cultivators can use. It is best if it can help me raise my grade in the future. It was rare to meet such a strong artifact blacksmith. Naturally, Zhongsho wouldn't miss this chance. The armor was prepared for Ruoshui. As for the defensive treasure, he was prepared to give it to Ruolin. Grade 9 cultivators could use it. Once they reached the spirit realm, they would be able to use it. It is okay with me. It isn't difficult to do. The middle-aged man frowned, his eyes filled with regret. However, this black Shin purple hero iron would be a waste. Actually, the best way to use such a spiritual metal was to merge with other metals. If one used it well, it could increase its toughness. Zhong Shou smiled, following which he took out some ores from his sleeves, as well as some spiritual metal that he had already refined, and placed them in front of him. When the middle-aged man with the surname Chun saw this, the expression in his eyes changed once more. There was a hint of surprise on his face. "It seems like I have neglected you. Your identity is definitely above what I imagined. You must be the ruler of a large country." As he said this, the middle-aged man took in a deep breath and placed one of the black Shin purple hero iron into his sleeves. He picked out some of the ores and spiritual metal, leaving a large half behind. Following which he stopped. "To craft these few magical treasures, I only need these things. My Wenchi building has a few other precious spiritual metals that can be used as materials. The rest are useless. You can keep them." Following which his brows furrowed, and he hesitated. "These things are really precious. I think you won't be at ease with me. How about this? While I'm in seclusion, you can stay in Wenchi Tower. The formations here are complete, and there's a quiet room. There's no need to be afraid of being spied on. It should suit your needs." Zhong Shou was not worried at all. These things were taken from the Qin Emperor's secondary tomb. They were not his to begin with. Perhaps it was because of this that he didn't think much of it. Subconsciously, he felt that the person in front of him was trustworthy. However, in this celestial world, it was not bad to have a place to stay. He had looked around when he was sightseeing. Every inch of land here was worth its weight in gold. It was impossible to rent a temporary cave abode here. It wasn't far from a celestial world, and it happened to be the place where he and Shi Rulin had agreed to meet 2 months later. I wanted to find a place to settle down outside of the celestial world. Who knew that in the end, there would be such a surprise? Naturally, he went with the flow and agreed. Zhong Shou was about to keep all the things in front of him. However, just at this moment, his spiritual sense moved. Zhong Shou's brows rose as he looked at his left sleeve. Just now, the one who used spiritual sense to contact him was the blue fire Xian turtle. It wasn't a natural protector beast, and it was a life protector beast. Spiritual sense communication had some barriers. Zhong Shou spent a few breaths to barely understand what the turtle meant. "You also want to craft 2 spiritual shields? The bigger one needs to be at least 6,000 feet. Can it protect the body? The bigger the better. It must have the body of a god beast. Can it be used?" After understanding what it meant, Zhong Shou felt confused. "You already have a Xuanwu armor on your body. Its defensive ability can be compared to celestial artifacts. Why do you need this item? Isn't it unnecessary?" "Not unnecessary. This is called being prepared for nothing. Naturally, the thicker the better, the more the better. You won't find it too much. Survival is the most important. It is best if it is such that others can't hit it at all." Zhong Shou's face cramped up as he imagined this blue fire Xian turtle wearing the shell of a god realm Xuanwu, holding 2 giant shields in its hands, its body covered in Xian ice. In the end, it could still use the Xuanwu body protecting energy. Instantly, a waterfall-like cold sweat appeared on his forehead. This was pretty much like a fortress. Normal people wouldn't be able to do anything to it. Even Zhong Shou would sigh when he looked at it. If he had dozens of energy-destroying crossbows on its back, he quickly stopped his thoughts. The latter part was just his own imagination. But in the end, he was convinced by this guy. Zhong Shou waved his sleeves and released the blue fire Xian turtle, tossing it beside him. This fellow knew its place, shrinking its body to 100 feet so that it didn't crush the building. Its eyes looked at Zhong Shou and the Shun surnamed middle-aged man, blue fire Xian turtle. What a protector spirit beast, a mutated Xuanwu. Esteemed guest, you are so lucky. With this beast here, others can't do anything to you. You can cast spells at will. He praised, but the Shun surnamed middle-aged man didn't know what he meant. Thus, he looked at him with a questioning gaze. Then, he heard Zhong Shou laugh bitterly. "Can Landlord Chen customize 2 shield for my protector spirit beast? It needs to be 6,000 feet wide, and it can be big or small. If these materials aren't enough, Zhong Shou can purchase them in the celestial world." When the Shun surnamed middle-aged man heard this, his head was covered in cold sweat. The Xuanwu bloodline was one of the best god beasts in the world at defending, along with 2 magical treasure-level shields. How strong would that be? He didn't know that this was what the blue fire Xian turtle wanted, only thinking that it was Zhongshu's idea. Thus, he looked at Zhongshu with a weird gaze. Thinking about it, he nodded his head. No need, I have the materials here. It is worth roughly 300 Xian gray mine stones. However, it is a little problematic to customize it for a god beast. I want to look at the structure of this Xian turtle and investigate its abilities. Does esteemed guest mind? Zhongshu nodded his head slightly. Since he was going to craft for this Xian turtle, then naturally, this was something that he had to do. Actually, god beasts were the spirit of all beings, an intelligent race. They were similar to humans, but their positions were far above humans. If they were willing, as long as their strength reached a certain level, they could be like Ao Kuan and change the shape of their bodies. Not only Little Gold, but even Hanshi could do that, much less this blue fire Xian turtle. It was naturally no problem to use spiritual artifacts and magical artifacts, just that they were a little special and weren't commonly used treasures. Even the most skilled artifact blacksmiths needed to understand the structure of the god-beast body and true essence, as well as its abilities before they could start. This was why when he heard the Shun surnamed middle-aged man's words, Zhongshu wasn't shocked, but delighted instead. Then I will have to trouble landlord. Mine stones aren't a problem. It is best if you choose the best. Even if it wasn't enough, he had snatched so many spiritual pills from the Qin Emperor's subtomb. Any one of them would be enough. If it is possible, landlord, please be quick. Oh, his words stopped. Zhongshu suddenly tilted his head and looked outside. He saw that on the streets of Wenqi Pavilion, there were 2 familiar people walking. Their bodies were petite. Compared to the last time he saw them, they were more feminine. Their faces were exquisite and beautiful, fresh and elegant. The former was still cold and elegant. The latter was still as innocent and pure as usual. Yi Fei Shuang, Yi Fan? Why are they here? What a coincidence. The people samurai was looking at were Fei Shuang and Fan, who he hadn't met for many years. He was thinking about how lucky he was to be able to bump into them in the celestial world dozens of worlds away. Then, he felt that it wasn't right. The celestial world was nearby. It was the biggest market and there was no other. If the Yi family sisters left the cloud world, it wasn't weird for them to come here. Since they were all cultivators, then it was reasonable for both sides to bump into each other here. At this moment, the flood dragon puppet followed beside the 2 of them. Looking at its aura, it had obviously succeeded in transforming into a dragon and was at the spirit realm. Its strength couldn't be suppressed or hidden. As it walked on the streets, it was like a candle that attracted attention. This was also the reason why Zhongshu could sense the Yi family sisters in the crowd when they were talking. Just as he was about to greet them, Zhongshu felt a sense of danger. His eyes squinted as he looked into the crowd. These 2 girls are already being targeted by someone, and they actually don't know. As expected, their experience is too shallow. Although he couldn't spread out his spiritual sense, Zhongshu could see through the actions of the few people in the crowd. He noticed that something was up, and there were also a few threads of killing intent. Fei Shuang and Fan didn't notice, but they couldn't escape his eyes. Spirit realm? Zhongshu thought about it seriously and decided to watch from the side. In the celestial world, most of these people wouldn't dare to attack. Fei Shuang and Fan also didn't seem to have any intention of leaving. He would take a look first. Even if he wanted to help the 2 sisters, he had to understand the situation of these people. With that thought in mind, Zhongshu retracted his gaze. Then, the middle-aged man smiled and asked, "Did you see someone you know?" Zhongshu nodded his head and then shook his head. "Maybe I saw wrongly." The middle-aged man's eyes flashed, and he didn't probe deeper. Zhongshu cultivated the 7-cycle Xiantong full restriction technique, which sealed up his true qi and spiritual sense, such that he couldn't see through him. However, just from his celestial realm spiritual turtle, one could see how strong Zhongshu was. With such cultivation, how could he see wrongly? Knowing that Zhongshu wasn't willing to talk about it, the middle-aged man directly stood up. "Then that's settled. I will try to bring forward the crafting time. However, if it doesn't affect the quality, it will take at least 3 months. I think I will have to make you wait for a long time. Zhongsho's brows furrowed slightly. 3 months seemed a little long. Then he understood. Normal blacksmiths would take 1.5 years to craft magical treasures. Pavilion Master Chun must have used some kind of secret art to achieve such a feat. To be able to meet such a blacksmith was already a huge fortune. So how could he ask for more? It was just a month of waiting. There was no problem, and it was worth it. His thoughts turned to the Yi family sisters. Why did Fei Shuang and Fan come here? What did they do to offend so many spirit realm cultivators? Chapter 802. After the middle-aged man finished, he stood up and was about to leave. However, right as he was about to step into the room, he stopped and frowned. Esteemed guest, it is best if you don't head out these few days. Even if you have no choice, you have to be careful. Zhongsho was shocked. I heard that Tianfeng Guild has been in charge of this world for close to 3,000 years. This was a factionless cultivator alliance. The cultivators within basically all came from Tianfeng World. Originally, there were no living beings here. However, as the number of cultivators increased, many blood descendants were left. This Tianfeng world was good for cultivation. Over the years, they formed a huge group. They were really strong and had several God Realm experts. There were even Saint Realm cultivators supporting them. They affected the surrounding hundreds of worlds and ensured the peace of Tianfeng World. It is the Night Demon race, Shadow God race, Shura Emperor, and even your Cloud World cultivators. Recently, they have been really active, and this place isn't safe. The middle-aged man shook his head and then looked over with a deep gaze. You come from the Cloud World and have a special identity. You should know the reason. Zhongsho was enlightened when he heard this and was in deep thought. The outsiders had made their move so quickly. Thinking about the position of this celestial world, he understood. The worlds within the region were actually stacked and parallel to one another in the time and space river. Actually, speaking of which, there wasn't a difference in distance or direction. It was just that when the various worlds were formed, they were connected to one another, and there was some transportation. This was why there was a shortcut, a world river. All the big and small worlds looked like bubbles of different sizes squeezed together. Naturally, in the outer region, there would be so-called strategic locations. The celestial world wasn't a dangerous place, but it was a good place to gain a foothold. To conquer the Cloud World and choose this place as a base, it was indeed much more convenient. Actually, if he had enough strength, he could conquer the outer region. He had to first control this celestial world. With this place in hand, he could forcefully suppress the dozens of worlds around. This was indeed a place he had to fight for. Although Tianfeng Guild was strong, be it the few alien races or the few factions of the Cloud World, they were far stronger than them. In front of these few powers, Tianfeng Guild was everything. If it wasn't necessary, he wouldn't dare to offend him. One could imagine the chaos in Tianfeng World. Seeing that he understood, the middle-aged man didn't say anything else. He brought the blue fire Xian turtle into the artifact crafting room. Zhongsho also dodged at the same time, outside of Wenxi building. He chased after Fan and Fei Shuang until the two of them entered a pavilion floating in the air. Only then did he stop. This was the Sky Immortal Pavilion built by the Tianfeng Alliance. It was specially for rogue cultivators who came to the Tianfeng world to rent. There were only 5 of them, and they were all in the best places in Tianfeng world. Be it spiritual energy or formations, they were all really good. There were also cultivators from the Tianfeng Guild guarding outside. The owner of the Celestial Pavilion was considered a VIP in the Tianfeng world, so it was hard to find someone like that. Zhongsho had asked about it before he came. Unfortunately, the 5 immortal pavilions had already been rented out. Unexpectedly, one of them was in the hands of Fei Shuang and Fan. And from the looks of it, it should have been quite some time. He couldn't help but smile. He almost really thought that these 2 girls didn't know about their situation. Now it seemed like they were doing it on purpose, acting like they didn't notice. With Fei Xuan's personality, she definitely didn't know the theory of not showing off one's wealth. However, at this moment, she was really ostentatious, renting such a building. It was obvious that she had a reason for doing so. However, her cultivation was still a little shallow. Although the elder sister acted calm, her eyes were flickering. However, the light in his eyes was always flickering, and he would occasionally look around. The younger sister was really innocent, but there was still a bit of worry that couldn't be removed. Speaking of which, these two sisters had gone through so many hardships, so how could they still be as pure as before? Speaking of which, their cultivation advancement was really surprising. Not seeing them for a few years, they actually reached grade 9. It seemed like the matter of these sisters wasn't as simple as Jiuelong City. Thinking about it for a moment, Zhongsho was expressionless. He tossed a talisman into a secluded corner beside the street. It was a celestial talisman that he obtained from the battle with the Taoist faction after killing numerous celestial cultivators. Its use was really average, only being able to control everything within 1,000,000 feet. However, it was hidden. Even God Realm cultivators wouldn't be able to notice it if they didn't pay attention. Zhongsho left this talisman to observe the tracks of the Yi family sisters. If they faced danger, he could save them. Looking deeply at the few people in the crowd, Zhongsho scoffed coldly and flashed away. He returned to the Wenqi building and entered the room that landlord Chun arranged for him. He noticed that the environment here was really great. Maybe it wasn't as good as the small building that Fei Xuan and Fan rented, but the spiritual energy here was really abundant. The formation here was really, as he said, really exquisite, not afraid of others peeking into it. With Zhongsho's observation, the structure of the formation was really tight, even above the 5 VIP celestial pavilions of Tianfeng Guild. He tried to use his spiritual sense to look in, only to see that the restrictions within were densely packed. Layer upon layer, who knows how many layers there were. It was actually an endless cycle, endless and endless. Even if one forcefully broke in, one would be lost within. Landlord Chun, I wonder where you came from? How extraordinary. If this formation was personally laid out by him, then I am afraid I have underestimated his formation cultivation. Shaking his head, Zhongsho took out a set of formation flags and laid them out within the formation. There were a total of 72 flags, split into red, yellow, black, and white. It was known as the Heaven and Earth Flag Gate Formation. This was given by Kong Rue. Based on what he said, it was passed down by the Kong family ancestors. During the Cloud Desolate era, it was famous for a period of time. Then, it was damaged and placed in the treasury. Before he was removed from his position, he had been researching how to restore it. After that incident, he conveniently brought it over to the Cloud World. Power of this formation depended entirely on the person in charge of it. Not only could it defend against celestial realm cultivators, but could also block the spiritual sense of God realm cultivators. Even Saint realm cultivators would be able to buy some time to react. As they say, one had to be wary of others. People who met for the first time couldn't be said to have true trust. Although the formation here was good, it was hard to say what backdoors the master of this place would set up. If one really didn't defend at all, then that would be a joke. Since it involved the Book of Ian, one had to be really careful and couldn't be careless. After laying out the formation, Zhongsho sat within, taking out the Book of Ian and placing it in front of him. He had already seen the 3rd page of this spiritual technique treasure book. As he didn't have much lifespan left on the 4th page, no matter what, he didn't dare to open it. After the tribulation, his lifespan greatly increased, increasing by a full 1,600 years. Unfortunately, during these 2 months, if he wasn't busy memorizing the classics in Song Xingdao, he would be spending time with Xin Yuan Irin. Only now did he have some free time. Taking a deep breath, Zhongsho flipped open the book. When his hand touched the 4th page, Zhongsho was shocked. When he touched the 4th page, he instantly felt a close to exploding pain in his mind. Numerous runes and spiritual talismans charged into his soul. He could also feel that the life energy in his body was being consumed bit by bit. 300 years of lifespan? TSK. My lifespan is a little short and my talents are a little weaker. I really can't use such a top-secret book. Scoffing coldly, Zhong didn't hesitate at all. He flipped open the fourth page. Then there was an explosion in his soul. His entire soul, was in turmoil. Those stars were shaking. The 18 talismans were shaking. Even the black and white holes were twisting. The intense pain caused Zhong to nearly groan out loud. His body didn't feel much, but his soul felt like it was smashed into thousands of pieces by someone using a weapon. These changes only stabilized 2 hours later. Zhong was panting within the room. His face was covered in bean-sized sweat, his eyes filled with bitterness. He only felt that his entire body was unprecedentedly weak. He even found it extremely difficult to raise his arm. At this moment, even if a kid was in front of him, as long as the kid held a sharp weapon, he would be able to kill him on the spot. Actually, the stamina, vital energy, and soul power in his body weren't damaged at all. However, this weakness that came from the depths of his heart was extremely real. In an instant, 300 years of lifespan was consumed, causing him to be totally exhausted. At this moment, Zhong was filled with fear as he looked at the Book of Ian, not daring to touch it at all. However, a moment later, countless runes appeared in his mind again. Along with his soul, there was a fluctuation. Zhong looked closely and knew that this was the time and fate Dao. The fourth page of the Book of Ian was all in his memory. He only felt that his brain was being squeezed and swollen. Thinking about it slightly, he didn't think about it. Numerous talismans appeared in his mind. He instantly understood that if he didn't digest and organize the contents of the fourth page of the Book of Ian, he wouldn't be able to do anything. He probably wouldn't have the time or energy to think about other things. What a supreme treasure book! Within the pages, there is actually not only the time and fate Dao. It actually includes everything. Just this fourth page alone is comparable to a book building in Tsang Sheng Dao. Moreover, it was mostly practical and helpful for spirit master cultivation. There was no redundancy at all. There is also a complete set of spirit master cultivation methods. If one cultivated according to this method, one could easily grasp the time Dao. They all said that the universe and universe books existed when this region was formed. Looking at the contents of the book, that might not be the case. Maybe it really is a Xiantian treasure, but there are also traces of it being made by someone. If it is as I expected, has this person reached the true realm? Zhong didn't hesitate, grabbing a bunch of mind stones and starting to accelerate time. It caused the surrounding time flow to suddenly increase. However, this time it was just 3 days. Just like that, a grade 9 mind stone was used up. If it was before a yellow-gray grade, 9 mind stone would have been enough for 10 days. Now 2/3 of it is gone. Zhong frowned and continued. After his strength increased, these low-grade mind stones really weren't of much use. However, it didn't exceed what he could bear. Chapter 803. It was still close to 10 times the flow of time. Zhong sat within the room and didn't move at all. However, if one looked carefully, one would notice that around him there were many small spiritual energy dots. There were 3,000 of them, drawing in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. This was to train one's control of one's strength, to send threads of spiritual energy out of one's body. He controlled the 5-element spiritual energy to change into various shapes and postures, until he could once again reach the realm where he could enter the small details. Just like that, Zhong was like a wooden statue, not moving at all. Who knows how long passed, but the space around him suddenly twisted. Zhong woke up from his meditation, his eyes filled with a weird expression. 2 celestial realm experts? As expected, those aren't the only ones who want to attack those 2 silly brats. However, these people don't seem to be on the same side, and they aren't here to take revenge. Fei Shuang and Feiyan, what do they have in their hands to attract so much attention? The talisman that he left was still connected to his mind. Not only was he observing the two sisters, but he was also monitoring the suspicious people around. Not long ago, Zongsho sensed two celestial realm experts stopping nearby. In this world where people came and went, there wasn't anything special about it. However, for them to appear here several times and spread out their spiritual sense, that was really suspicious. Zongsho was pretty much sure that the two of them came for Fei Shuang and Fan. As for their goal, he still didn't know. As they say, if you help someone, you should help them all the way. It was best to get to the root of this matter and solve it all at once. Naturally, if they faced opponents that even Zongsho couldn't handle, he could ask Song Xingdao and his sect for help. Thinking about it for a moment, Zongsho took out 2 blank talisman papers. He used the beast blood he obtained from the Xuanwu as ink to write the runes. After the talisman was completed, Zongsho waved his sleeves. Instantly, 2 spiritual cranes formed in front of him. Flapping its wings, its body was extremely agile, as if it had intelligence. Then, Zongsho gently tapped the forehead of the spirit crane. It caused his figure to fade away. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from the quiet room. This was a secret technique that Zongsho had found in the Book of Ian. In reality, the 2 spirit cranes were not hiding their tracks. Instead, they were at different levels of time. Although it sounded extremely profound, it was actually extremely simple. If one were to take Zongsho's current breath as a reference, the 2 spirit cranes would have been forcefully pushed into the time period 1 breath ago. 0.003 of an instant earlier. Being in a different space-time plane, it was naturally extremely difficult for those cultivators to detect their existence. This method isn't bad. It's the most convenient method for eavesdropping. It's a pity that the consumption rate is a little too high. It's much higher than time acceleration. Zongsho's strength was completely drained at this moment. Just pointing his finger twice had exhausted all of his strength. Unfortunately, this method has too many limitations. It can't be maintained for too long, and it can't harm people. If not, I could let Ruoshui learn it. If she could use the Ruoshui stealth technique as well as that space jump technique, killing people would be really simple. Along with Zongsho having a thought, the 2 flying cranes flew into the air and chased the tracks of the 2 celestial realm cultivators. Zongsho turned his attention back to the Book of Ian once more. The mysteries within were really endless. Those runes and restrictions were a cycle of one another. With much difficulty, he finished deciphering 1 sentence. However, he would soon discover that if he arranged these runes in a different way, it would be another profound law, another meaning. Moreover, it would be in harmony with the heaven and earth path. It was just 1 page of the book. The total number of runes was just 100,000. However, it was like numerous theories were compressed within. The amount of information was shocking. However, Zongsho knew that if he wanted to comprehend it, he would need at least 100 years. At this moment, he was more and more certain that this Book of Ian was modified by someone. Inside, there were time and fate daos that were formed by Xiantian, but there were also many things that someone added. For example, just now, when he used the illusionary crane secret universe talisman. Although there was a lot of content, he had comprehended it during this period of time. Sitting quietly and adjusting his breathing, Zongsho waited for his energy to recover before he raised a thought. The space around him twisted once more and swiftly returned back to normal. It looked like there weren't any changes, but the spiritual energy consumption of the Book of Ian had decreased by a lot. As expected, if I use the space acceleration technique along with this Book of Ian, I can reduce Mind Stone consumption. Unfortunately, my cultivation is still a little weak, and I don't have enough strength. At the start, the internal energy consumption was huge, and Zongsho slowed down bit by bit. Moments later, it slowly stabilized. The consumption and regeneration of the spiritual energy and internal energy finally balanced out. He alone provided roughly 1/10 of the consumption of the Book of Ian. In other words, this method allowed him to save a full 1/10 of his Mind Stones. Although it was a drop in the bucket, it was better than nothing. What a joke! This time acceleration technique not only consumes lifespan, but it is also 20% more than normal. Spending so many mind stones to save myself. I really am a weirdo. Zhong Shou mocked himself. However, he didn't have any intentions of stopping. Using the Book of Ian to cultivate would consume a lot of resources and life force. However, what he lacked the most was time. He needed enough time to break through, continuously break through, until he had the strength to allow him to look down on this region and cause storms to surge. In the shortest amount of time, he would stand at the peak of the sword path. Another thing that made him annoyed was the 7-cycle Xiantong full restriction. The 7 restrictions would be unlocked one by one. His ability and Xian energy would be able to enter the small realm once more. At this moment, what he didn't know was that when Shi Zi created this cultivation method, it had flaws. Or was it that this technique conflicted with his yin-yang world-shocking art? However, something went wrong with the secret technique when it was used on him. Using the Book of Ian Extreme Life to cultivate for several years, he should have been able to unlock 1 or 2 restrictions. However, during these few days, Zhong Shou tried many times, but he was still unable to break it open. Luckily, this technique didn't affect his strength. After slowly grasping it, he could use more than 90% of his strength. Zhong Shou was helpless and could only temporarily place it down, not bothering about it, and allowing it to happen. Based on his conjectures, as long as he reached the small realm of Xian opening once more, he would be able to unlock all the 7-cycle Xiantong full restrictions. He would be able to break through the 7 cycles profound insight full restriction. Even if there were any flaws, he would be able to break through them by force. Time flew like a shuttle, and another 30 days passed. In Zhong Shou's ears, he finally heard a few words from the 2 spiritual cranes. Due to time being accelerated by 10 times, 30 days had passed in this room. Outside of the room, only 3 days had passed. The 2 spirit cranes followed beside him and were noticed by the 2 of them. Yi Fei Shuang, instant space, first dragon, no. Forcefully forcing, not. With her mother's example. Be careful. We need to be really careful. Then, we can only find another way. Speaking of which, we can only agree to that person. But what if that person turns on us? Why will we fear him? Kill. Their voices were intermittent, and they weren't really clear. It was obvious that the people who spoke were really careful. They either used spells or forbidden formations to block the divine senses and various secret arts of others. As for the 2 spirit cranes, they were also affected and couldn't hear clearly. Instant space, first dragon? Zhong Shou frowned slightly and was in deep thought. Instant space dragon was indeed first out of the 9 types of true dragon. Then, is it the first dragon hall? Before this, Zhong Shou had entered the 3rd dragon hall. It was the flaming dragon hall, which belonged to the blazing fire dragon race. However, everyone in the cloud world knew the location of this 3rd dragon hall. As for this first dragon hall, no one knew. Legend had it that it was already lost in the instant space dragon race. As for whether or not Ao Kuan knew, Zhong Shou didn't know. However, if his brother knew where it was, then why didn't he think of a way to borrow the power of this dragon hall when he needed strength? Then, how did the Yi family sisters know? Did their bodies have the bloodline of the instant space dragon race? However, if it was the first dragon hall, then it made sense. He couldn't figure it out no matter how he thought about it. However, he roughly knew the reason as well as many details. There are actually 5 initial celestial realm experts. These 2 girls really know how to cause problems. He didn't notice any higher god realm cultivators. However, if they attacked, he still had to be wary. He didn't inject much spiritual sense into the 2 spirit cranes. After listening for a moment, it was just some useless words. The 5 of them were obviously distracted and talking about the Tao. It was of no help to Zhong Shou at all. As for what they were planning, they didn't say a single word. Once their spiritual sense was used up, the 2 spirit cranes burned up. Zhong Shou didn't bother about them and continued to cultivate. In the next few months, there weren't any changes. The Yi family sisters stayed in the VIP Celestial Pavilion and rarely came out. Usually, they wouldn't step out of the celestial pavilion like they were waiting for something. Even if they came out occasionally, it was to buy spiritual pills for cultivation. They cultivated in the cultivation room for a full 3 months. To Zhongshu, it was more than 2 years. Until this day, Zhongshu felt an aura get close to the door. Only then did he wake up from his meditation once more. He kept the Book of Ian back into his soul ocean. With a thought, the 72 formation flags were rolled up and tossed into his sleeves. Waving his sleeves, Zhongshu opened the door. As expected, he saw the Tianqi Tower head standing in front of the cultivation room. Looking at Zhongshu, the Shun surnamed middle-aged man was shocked. "It has only been 3 months. Why do I feel that your spiritual sense is much stronger than before?" "Sir, your aura is obviously different from a few months ago. It seems that your cultivation has improved greatly again." The glow in Samuraim's eyes was retracted, and he didn't reply. He looked at the satisfied blue fire Xian turtle behind the middle-aged man, and then smiled. "Tower Head Shin came to find me because those magical treasures have been completed?" "That's right." The middle-aged man nodded slightly. His expression was really calm. "I was about to invite you to evaluate them. Let's see if you're satisfied." After he finished, he took out several magical treasures. They floated in the air and lined up in front of Zhongshu. Chapter 804. I was just about to invite you to appraise it. Let's see if you're satisfied. After he finished, he took out several magical treasures one after another. They floated in the air and lined up in front of Zhongshu. First was the sword and armor. With a thought, Zhongshu summoned these 2 items into his hands. His eyes instantly lit up. The sword and armor were both grade 3 magical treasures. Grade 9 martial cultivators could use them too. He tried to use true chi to activate it. As expected, the sword and armor's aura was really dim. What was rare was that it pretty much merged into one with the surrounding environment. There was no difference at all. He flicked his finger, causing the sword and armor to give out a buzzing sound. It looked like he didn't use much strength, but waves of internal energy seeped in to see what was going on. Following which he smiled. These 2 magical treasures were both above standard. Not only could they hide their aura, but their effects weren't weak either. The defensive ability of the armor was far above that of the same grade. On the sword body, one could actually store up strength in advance, and it was unusually sharp. However, beside the sword and armor, there were several button-sized black iron pieces. Zhongshu was deep in thought as he looked at the sword and armor in his hand. He saw that the sword handle, sword spine, and also within the armor had several dents which coincided with the iron pieces. I specially laid out this formation within the artifact. I split the core of the formation into 5. Once the 4 cores are removed, it will become a grade 3 magical treasure that Heaven Realm cultivators can use. Every time I place one in, it will raise by 1 to 2 grades. If all of them are installed, it will be grade 9. That middle-aged man expressionlessly explained. However, with that, the effects of the formation will be weakened. If not, the highest grade this artifact would be between a magical treasure and a celestial artifact. Zhongshu's eyes lit up. This landlord Chen really had a unique way of thinking, coming up with an original idea. He really didn't misjudge him to find this person to craft artifacts for him. They said that one couldn't have both the fish and the bear's paw. Actually, when he raised these conditions, he didn't have much hope for the use of these 2 magical treasures. However, at this moment, both the fish and the bear's paw were present. The defensive treasure that he had crafted for Ruolin was a shield. It was the same technique as before. However, in terms of defense, this treasure was countless times stronger than the armor from before. Zhongshu didn't take a closer look at it and kept it in his sleeve. Landlord Chen's standard could indeed be called a master blacksmith. The things he took out were definitely not ordinary. Lastly were the 2 giant shields that were crafted for the Xuanwu. At this moment, in this room, they had shrunk to only a few feet in diameter. Zhongshu subconsciously used his mana to summon it, but it did not budge. His eyes revealed a trace of surprise. He walked over and tried to hold it with his hand. Then his body sank, and he almost fell to the ground. Instantly, spirit and martial arts merger activated the power of the Juntian flame armor. Only by increasing the strength of his 36 mountains by several times did he manage to barely hold on. This giant shield had clearly exceeded the limits of his strength. At the very least, it was equivalent to the power of 180 Sumer mountains. Normal celestial realm cultivators only had the strength of 100 mountains. That blue fire Xian turtle was obviously delighted as it looked towards Zhongsho. Landlord Chun saw through Zhongsho's doubt. I have added 2 pieces of 10,000-year cold wall earth within. 10,000-year cold wall earth? Zhongsho's brow rose up, thinking to himself that this was the case. He had heard of this item before, and it was indeed really heavy. He broke out into a cold sweat, only feeling that he had made too big of a promise. Luckily, he had earned a huge fortune in the Qin Emperor tomb. Today, just this sum of money alone would cause him to be unable to leave the shop. He stared viciously at the blue fire Xian turtle. Because of these 2 shields, he was most probably going to suffer heavy losses. That Xian turtle knew what to do, and its eyes were filled with innocence. Landlord Qin smiled when he saw the situation. I was the one who was excited and didn't want the black Xian purple hero iron to be wasted just like that. This was why I decided to join in. You can give me a 30% discount after this. Zhongsho smiled and shook his head. Actually, as long as the treasure was what he wanted, no matter how high the price was, he was willing to accept it. Looking at the shield, it was pointed at the top and pointed at the bottom. Reaching in with true chi, he felt that it was really tough and dense. Although it wasn't at the level of a celestial artifact, it wasn't far away. He could only activate 30% of the formation within, and it should have been specially laid out for the blue fire Xian turtle. On the back of the shield, there were 2 dents which were convenient for the Xian turtle to use with its claws. Zhongsho was too lazy to think about it, directly tossing the 2 shields over. The blue fire Xian turtle was delighted, its body hanging in the air. Using true chi, it raised the 2 shields up and blocked in front of its body. After which, there was another buzzing sound. A black light flashed on the body of the shield, and a thin layer of mysterious ice appeared on the outside. Xuanwu body protecting energy. Zhongsho instantly sucked in a cold breath. Only now did he know that the artifact formation within the shield was laid out for the Xuanwu body protecting energy. It allowed the Xuanwu body protecting energy of the blue fire Xian turtle to be activated within the shield, similar to the turtle shell. The Xuanwu body protecting energy was one of the strongest defensive abilities in the world. Along with this shield, its toughness was unimaginable. There was also the Xian ice on the shield. At this moment, the blue fire Xian turtle was purposely retracting it. If it was willing, it could be thousands of feet thick. Then, the blue fire Xian turtle retracted its 4 limbs and head. As for the 2 shields, they split into a dozen to protect his body. Then at the sides of the shields, numerous blades stretched out. They were all spinning at high speeds and slashing the void. The aura was really domineering and extremely strong. Zhongsho's head felt numb. This was a fortress that couldn't be broken or broken. Its killing ability was also extremely strong. If it smashed over, Zhongsho might not be able to block it. Landlord Qin glanced at it indifferently. Then he shook his head and said, "It is you, the black tortoise, who took the initiative to plead. I also thought about it. If such a huge shield only had defensive abilities, it would be a waste. So I spent some effort. Luckily, power is not bad." In his heart, Zhongsho was thinking that this turtle most probably remembered the last time when he subdued it, and it couldn't fight back at all, which was why it was like that. However, this way, it really had both offense and defense. Even if it faced someone like him, it had a way to deal with him. Zhongsho didn't take a close look at the royal demon god shuttle behind. This item had to travel swiftly in the vast space to know its specific effects. He had enough confidence in the methods of the person who refined the weapon. He kept all these things. Zhongsho's expression was complicated as he looked at the Wunshi pavilion head opposite him. This was unprecedented. He wanted to know the exact name of this person and where he came from. He had never seen someone with such exquisite artifact crafting skills. Although Kongqi's sect had a legacy of 10,000 years compared to him, it was like comparing a craftsman to a grandmaster. Moreover, these magical treasures had the shadow of the Mahists. If he could recruit his Deqian, then he broke out into a laugh. Deqian was just a small country. How could they recruit such a person? To be able to drag those two giant shields in the air with his mind, he was at least late celestial realm. Looking at this person, he didn't have any intentions to have a deep relationship with him. His words were polite, but he kept people thousands of miles away. Since that was the case, it was best if he didn't ask for trouble. After paying the bill, Zongsho walked out of Tianqi building and directly left the celestial world. That Tianqi building landlord was really nice when doing business. However, the price of the materials still made one tongue-tied. At this moment, Zongsho's heaven and earth bag was pretty much empty. He wasn't willing to use those mind stones, so he used pills to exchange for them. Luckily, the other party could accept it and was delighted. These were pills refined by the top necromancers during the Qin Emperor's time. Not only were many of them extinct, but they were also rare and exquisite items. Zongsho was more and more certain that this person had a deep relationship with the cloud world. After exiting the celestial world, Zongsho drove the royal demon shuttle and sped around outside the void world. As expected, the speed was 4 times faster. Zongsho used his spiritual sense to take a look, and there were only a dozen more parts. Zongsho forcefully smashed into the void storm. However, he only felt that no matter how many void cracks flashed and spiritual energy struck, it still didn't move and wasn't damaged at all. In that instant, Zongsho was surprised. After leaving the cloud world, the first thing he had to do wasn't to conquer the outer region. Instead, he had to find ways to train his sword technique foundations. The most important thing was the black and white holes that had already become the foundations of the Tao. These two were only things he had heard about in the last life. He had only heard about them and seen images of them. As for the truth, he didn't know. His knowledge was also really shallow. This was why what he was most eager to do now was to head to the world that gave birth to these two to take a look. Only by seeing the real thing would his Tao be more real. Legend had it that to head to that region, one had to have the sturdiest spaceship to pass through a large void storm, which was really tough. This was why till now, the cloud world cultivators still hadn't noticed the existence of this world. This royal demon god shuttle is really not bad. Who knows how fast it will be when it fully recovers. Unfortunately, it isn't as stylish as my blue fire Xian turtle. This thing is good for rushing. Normally, it is best to use it as a transport, overbearing and domineering. Speaking of which, it is weird. Since this item is called the Royal Demon God Shuttle, then its function should be to repel demons and slay evil. Why don't I see any of these functions? Sometimes, it wasn't because he was arrogant, but because he wanted to avoid trouble. To have such a turtle to accompany him when he was in the outer region. If other people wanted to have bad intentions towards him, they would think about it carefully. After all, at this moment, he was cultivating the 7-cycle Xiantong full restriction. His true qi and aura were totally covered, and he was like a normal person. Zongsho gave a try, and then stopped. He spread out his spiritual sense, and started to contact Ruoshui and Shirulan. According to the time, his fleet should be arriving soon. However, what about Fan and Feishuang? If he left now and met up with the fleet, he wouldn't be able to take care of the two sisters. If something happened during this period of time, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Just as he was thinking about that, Zongsho felt that the talisman in Tianyuan world moved once more. Those two sisters had finally come out. Chapter 805. It seems like they were forced out. Zongsho's eyes shone brightly as he looked closely at the situation there. When Fan and Feishuang left, they were in a hurry. It was like they were forcefully chased out by the VIP Celestial Pavilion guards. It was either they were short of money and couldn't afford the Mind Stones, or Tianfang Guild couldn't take the pressure and could only chase them out. Thinking back to 2 days ago when these two sisters were still searching for pills on the streets, the possibility of it being the former was really low. Speaking of which, those few initial Celestial Realm experts have some background. Zhongsho scoffed coldly. Tianfang Guild's actions today made him feel disdain, and annoyance rose in his heart. As for those few Celestial Realm experts, he didn't care at all. Song Xingdao was the second last out of the few factions in the Cloud World. However, in the outer region, they were a huge power. Not to mention that Mingyu was nearby. With a star-shining talisman, he could rush over in an instant. Riding the Royal Demon God shuttle, in just 2 moments, he was outside of the Cloud World. Then, he hid at the side and looked on coldly. Moments later, he could sense 3 streaks of light flying out from Tianfang World, 1 in front and 2 behind. He focused his spiritual chi into his eyes, looking into the void, only to see that the faces of the 2 girls were filled with worry. Not long after the 2 of them left, a few auras shot out from Tianfang World, following far behind the 3 of them. He sensed from afar that it was the few people who spoke just now. Zhongsho smiled and then activated the shuttle. In just a moment, he rushed to the front. He headed towards Fan and Fei Shuang. Then, he acted like it was a coincidence and appeared outside of the shuttle. Isn't this Fan and Fei Shuang? What coincidence? Why are the 2 of you here? His face was filled with doubt. His acting was really good. When the Fei Shuang sisters saw a shuttle charge over from the World River, they were really nervous. In despair, he focused and was wary. When he saw that it was Zhongsho, his expression relaxed. So it is Brother Shou. Yi Fan was pleasantly surprised. You are indeed fine. I've been worried sick for the past 2 years. Sister Fei Shuang always said that you were in a bad situation and that you would be killed by the Taoist faction sooner or later. I wonder how you are now. Luckily, Brother Shou is fine. When Yi Fei Shuang heard this, she snorted and said in disdain, how could he be fine? The spiritual wave had already risen in the Cloud World, and it was the best time to cultivate. Who would leave so easily? However, this fellow went to the outer region. Most likely, Qin Tian country was destroyed, and he was forcefully chased out by the Taoist faction. Zhongsho was slightly startled when he heard that. Didn't these 2 sisters hear about what happened in the Cloud World these few years? In the cultivation world, anyone who is well-informed should know that the current situation of the Dao sect was extremely bleak because of him. However, it wasn't wrong to say that the Taoist faction forced them out of the Cloud World. It seemed like his reputation was unparalleled in the Cloud World, and he was invincible. However, no one in the outer realm knew about it. As Yi Fei Shuang spoke, her expression turned cold. My sister and I have only met a few times in the Cloud World. We don't have much of a relationship. If you don't have anything, can you move aside? Yi Fan's brows were filled with shock. Then she understood, the joy in her eyes slowly receding. She nodded her head slightly. That's right. Brother Zhongsho, you should leave quickly. Let's talk in the future. Zhongsho was delighted when he heard that, looking at the serious Fan. Since when did this little girl become so observant? Also, why did Yi Fei Shuang give him such a bad attitude every time they met? He didn't reply, instead looking into the distance, his eyes filled with curiosity. Are those few people familiar with you? Or did you offend them? Why are those few people so filled with killing intent? Yi Fei Shuang's expression changed, and she turned her head to look behind her. Within Guojian's World River, there were a few streaks of light chasing after him. She didn't hesitate, pouncing forwards and grabbing onto Zhongsho's hand. She was flustered. It is all your fault. I asked you to leave, but you didn't. Now it is too late to leave. At the same time, a celestial talisman rose up in her hand. Instantly, a spiritual light flashed, bringing Fein and the other 3 to dash forwards. With the celestial talisman buffing them, their speed was actually no slower than Zhongsho's repaired Royal Demon God shuttle. Zhongsho was speechless, thinking to himself, why leave? He just had to deal with the 5 of them here. He struggled a little, causing the talisman to loosen a little. However, Zhongshoxin had a thought, and still stopped. These few celestial realm cultivators should have more than just this. However, there was nothing he could do. He could only allow the light to bring him into the void. He passed through many world barriers. However, just as Fan and Fei Shuang relaxed and thought that they had shaken off the few celestial realm cultivators behind them, a loud boom rang out, only to hear a loud quang nearby. The light brought by the celestial talisman was instantly, forcefully scattered. Zhongshu's body was like a pillar, standing in the void and not moving at all. However, Fei Shuang, and the ice hornless dragon couldn't take it. He tumbled around in the void, feeling dizzy and almost being torn apart by the surrounding spatial fissures. Then he laughed out loud, two brats who were still wet behind the ears. Just because you have a few Xiankong world-breaking movement talismans, you really think that others can't do anything to you? Along with these words, an intense light suddenly slid over. A person in a green robe stood proudly in front. Behind him was a spiritual light shining. One could see that it was a special-looking magical treasure. However, rather than calling it treasure, it was better to call it a formation. A full 36 spirit realm cultivators sat within with their eyes closed. Each of them held a spiritual seal in their hands, activating the treasure to the extreme. It also caused this person's aura to far exceed his actual strength. It locked down this part of the void. Looking at this person, his face was purple gold and his brow bones were protruding. Who knows which world he was from? One couldn't see his exact age. He held a sword in his hand and looked over with a cold gaze. Yi Fan recognized him. Her face turned green. Kenyang's sword, Saint Yu Kenyang. You recognize me? A weird expression appeared on Yu Kenyang's face, and then he smiled. Since you recognize me, then don't make me attack. Tell me where the first dragon hall is, and I can let you live. Zhongshu listened on, thinking to himself that as expected, it was the first dragon hall, the legacy land of the instant space dragon race. He looked behind him. Those few celestial realm cultivators were swiftly closing in and surrounding them. It was obvious that the few of them had decent void movement techniques. Yi Fan's expression turned into one of shock. After stabilizing her body, she frowned. I recognize Senior, but why are you blocking us? I know about the first dragon hall, but isn't the legacy land of the instant space dragon race in the cloud world? What does it have to do with us? Nothing? Since it has nothing to do with you, then why are the two of you fleeing? For you to say such words now, aren't you trying to hide something? Yu Kenyang scoffed coldly, his voice filled with disdain. After saying this, he shook his head. Forget it. I am too lazy to talk nonsense with you. I will capture the two of you, and naturally we will see the truth. Casually grabbing out, a huge power pressed down from all directions. Although Yi Fan was in despair, she was prepared. She casually tossed out, and a ring-shaped magical treasure was tossed out, laying in the air. Coincidentally, it protected the four of them within. The hornless dragon also let out a roar, transformed into an ice hornless dragon, and soared into the sky. It went all out to support this treasure. Zhongshu's brow rose up, thinking to himself that he really couldn't see through these two brats. This level of treasure was no weaker than the two Xuanwu shields of the blue fire Xian turtle. Unfortunately, the strength of the person controlling the treasure was far inferior to him. As expected, in just an instant, the ice-horn dragon spat out large mouthfuls of blood. That cruel sun sword Saint Yu Kenyang didn't even attack, just pure energy suppression, and he was able to heavily injure the ice-horn dragon. Looking at the situation of a dragon, it was obviously using all its potential to hold on. It only had such decisiveness because it didn't have intelligence and was controlled by others. Fan and Fei Shuang's faces were ashen white. With the Icehorn Dragon's realm and burning its life potential, it still couldn't do anything to Yu Kenyang. Naturally, the two of them couldn't do anything and didn't have a right to do so. Yi Fei Shuang laughed bitterly. This time we are really going to die here. I'm sorry, we sisters have implicated you again. If this cruel sun sword saint wants to capture us and interrogate us, We won't die so quickly. However, Zhongsho, it can't be considered dragging you down. Zhongsho shook his head and interrupted Yi Fei Shuang. Looking at Yu Qingyang in front of him, he sneered. He sneered coldly in his heart. How could such a person deserve the title of Sword Saint? Where was his master longing? Even if he had that formation treasure to rely on, he was still confident that he could kill him in 3 swords. If it was the 6-god defensive knife technique, then he would only need 1. He then looked behind him and said, "Could it be that the enemies of you 2 sisters are these people? What does it have to do with Jiulong City?" Yi Fei Shuang didn't understand. However, she shook her head. "No, these people are just doing some business in the outer region to sell dragon skin and tendons. That cruel Sun Sword Saint's master is a saint realm venerable who controls a world. He found out that I was searching for the location of the first dragon hall, which was why he chased me. We were careless and revealed our tracks." Zhongsho instantly understood. So that was the case. Jiulong City was the hunter, and these people were in charge of selling the stolen goods. Yi Fei Shuang gritted her teeth and tugged at Zhongsho's sleeves. It was like she felt dejected for dragging down Zhongsho. God Realm? If that is the case, then it is simple. Those words caused the 2 girls to be startled. Zhongsho was already holding his sword. His boiling, killing intent formed into a line. He held back the cruel Sun Sword Saint. His body had the 7-cycle Xiantong, full restriction. Even if his killing intent gathered, his aura was still really dim. It only caused Yu Qingyang to take a look at him, but he didn't care. Seeing that the ice hornless dragon couldn't take it anymore. Its flesh and blood were tearing apart. Zhongsho couldn't take it anymore and waved his hand. He forcefully pulled the ice hornless dragon down from the ring. Then his aura exploded and he was about to attack. Chapter 806. Seeing that the ice hornless dragon couldn't take it anymore. Its flesh and blood were tearing apart. Zhongsho couldn't take it anymore and waved his hand. He forcefully pulled down the ice hornless dragon from the ring. Then his aura exploded and he was about to attack. True Qi surged, and the 7-cycle Xiantong, full restrictions, retracted one by one. The restrictions were removed. An unparalleled sword intent was ready to move. However, just at this moment, a giant light suddenly descended from the void and struck right at Yu Qingyang. A loud and hearty laugh could be heard from afar. Yu Qingyang, who knew that the famous cruel Sun Sword Saint would fall to the point where you have to bully juniors. "If you want to fight today, then I will accompany you." Yu Qingyang frowned and scoffed coldly. He didn't seem to move at all, and the sword light beside him shot into the air. Instantly, light shot out in all directions, causing the entire world river to be covered in bright light. The sword's shadow changed and turned into balls of blazing, sun-like flames. However, it was only half a piece. It clashed with the hooked shadow that came from afar. Then, the void was destroyed, and the numerous source spirits around all collapsed. Within the void, one's cultivation wasn't high enough. There was no sound, but one could see how huge the aura of the 2 of them were. The 2 of them were locked in a stalemate for just a moment. The hooked shadow had a slight advantage. Pretty much every hooked shadow that landed would cause a portion of the sun to be destroyed. In just a moment, Yu Qingyang and the formation treasure had retreated dozens of breaths away. He suddenly stopped and kept the sword light. His expression was really ugly as he looked into the distance. "Zhu Xie Broken Hook. Zhuya Hongji, did I offend you? You want to be my enemy? You didn't offend me, but offended my good friend. Miss Yi Fei Shuang is someone that I, Zhuya Hongji, admire. Since I bumped into her, then how can I allow you to be so arrogant?" That loud laugh rang out once more. Then, a red-robed teen suddenly appeared in front of them. His face was like jade, holding a silver hook in his hand, looking really elegant as he bowed towards Yi Fei Shuang and Yi Fan. "Half a month ago, when I received your distress signal, Hongji was still in the Grand Frost world. Fortunately, he had arrived in time and was not too late. Otherwise, I, Zhuya Hongji, will regret it for the rest of my life." Zhongsho looked on coldly from the side. He was wondering which chivalrous warrior had passed by and made a move. Later on, when he saw the 2 of them fighting, he felt strange. This battle between a hook and a sword was too fake. The momentum was undeniably majestic and shocking. However, it was clear that the two of them had not truly gone all out. It was fine if the person who used the hook was unwilling to use his full strength. There was no need for him to risk his life for a stranger. But why was Yukinyang the same? Only when Jia Hongji appeared and spoke did they realize that he was an acquaintance of Yi Fei Shuang. It seemed like their relationship was not shallow. This made them even more puzzled. With such a fierce battle, did they think that they wouldn't be able to see through it? His eyes narrowed slightly as he glanced at this person. Zhong Shou smiled with an indiscernible expression. The 7-cycle Xiantong full restriction returned back to normal, suppressing and restricting his internal energy and soul power once more. His interest was piqued, and he wanted to see what these people were up to and what kind of show they were going to put on. Yi Feian was surprised and said happily, "Brother Jia is here." Yi Fei Shuang was more reserved, but she was slightly moved. Grand Frost World? Hongji, it has been tough on you. Grand Frost World was hundreds of worlds away from the celestial world. Even if it was an immortal realm expert, if he wanted to rush over in half a month, he would have to travel day and night without rest. Zhong Shou's face twitched. Brother Jia? Hongji? He was really close. It is not worth mentioning. Jia Hongji smiled and didn't care at all. He then smiled towards Yi Feian. Miss Han, are you frightened? Yi Feian immediately shook her head and then hugged Zhong Shou's arm. With Brother Zhong Shou here, I am not afraid. Jia Hongji seemed to have only noticed Zhong Shou's presence at this moment. He looked deeply at Zhong Shou, especially the hand that Yi Feian used to hug Zhong Shou's arm. His eyes shone, and then he nodded slightly as a greeting. You are Zhong Shou? Jia Hongji greets you. After he said this, he looked back at Yukinyang. Brother Yu, this is really weird. Since I am here, why don't you know how to leave? Do you really want to have a fight with me, Zhu Xia, right here? Or do you think you have a chance to bully my two good friends in front of me? Yukinyang kept silent and didn't speak until those few celestial realm cultivators rushed over. They surrounded this place and then said seriously, Jia Hongji, your Jia Broken Hook is not bad. Martial Path Soul Realm, intent condensed and not dissipating. It is indeed extraordinary. However, if you fight with us, the outcome is still uncertain. Whether I leave or stay, is it up to you to judge? As for who is stronger and who is weaker, we will know after the battle. When Jia Hongji heard this, he laughed out loud in a heroic manner. Since you aren't willing to leave, then don't blame me for forcing you to leave. He held a pair of silver hooks, but he didn't target Yukinyang. Instead, he targeted another celestial realm cultivator. In just a flash, he was in front of that person. The hook slashed down and broke everything. That celestial realm cultivator hurriedly used his sword to block. However, with it was cleanly sliced by the silver hook. The defensive artifact beside him was only able to block a little before it was forcefully broken by the hook. Luckily, Jia Hongji didn't intend to kill him. When Yukanyang's sword light charged over, he dodged to the side. He retreated to the side to avoid it. Before he left, he waved out with his hook, hooking off that person's hair. Today, I will use your hair to replace your head. Next time, you won't be so lucky. In the next moment, he flashed in front of another person. Jia Hongji's silver hook slashed down once more. Similarly, under Yukanyang's restriction, he cut off that person's hair. Just like that, there were 4 people in a row. They were all in a bad state, their faces really ugly. Their hair was messy like a bird's nest. Yi Feian couldn't help but burst out laughing. Jia Hongji spoke out once more. Yukinyang, you might be able to escape unscathed from my hook today. However, that might not be the case for your subordinates. If you really don't care about their lives, it is tough to find a few celestial realm subordinates near the cloud world. Yukanyang's brows were tightly furrowed. A storm gathered in his eyes like he was filled with rage. Maybe because he was really helpless, he kept his sword by his side once more. You can stop now. His expression was dark and sunken as he looked at Jia Hongji, laughing coldly. Do you know? How many secrets do these 2 girls have on them? In the cloud world, Only these two brats know where the instant space dragon hall is and how to enter. Who knows how many cultivators in the celestial world want to enter? I want to see how long you can protect them for. Instant space dragon hall, the top dragon hall of the cloud world? Jia Hongji was startled and really surprised. Then, he looked at the two pairs of sisters behind him curiously. Then, he shook his head. I don't care about that. What happens to me has nothing to do with you. The instant space dragon hall belongs to the dragon race. The two of them have dragon blood and naturally have a right to inherit it. It is unrighteous to snatch the things of others. If other people covet it, I will naturally kill them. Yukinyang, I advise you to stop as soon as possible. Zhongsho was at the side. His heart was racing. For some reason, Yi Fan was hugging his arm tightly. Only now did he notice that this brat was surprisingly well endowed. The two soft lumps on her chest were already really majestic. As such, he didn't bother to listen to what the two of them were saying. Actually, he was too lazy to listen. At this moment, he roughly guessed what was going on. He felt respect in his heart. This plan was really ingenious. Yu Kanyang's expression changed, suddenly happy and suddenly furious. In the end, he scoffed coldly. Since that is the case, then I will take my leave. I only hope that you don't regret it in the future. After saying this, he didn't hesitate at all. He waved his sleeves, and the few messy celestial realm cultivators all backed off. Yu Kanyang's figure also suddenly disappeared in the void in front of them, disappearing without a trace. Moments later, Jia Hongji turned his head. He has already left. Looking at the direction he left towards, he should be heading towards Tianfeng World. His brows were tightly furrowed and worry appeared in his eyes. Miss Fei Shuang, it is best if the two of you leave. Yu Kanyang's personality is one that takes revenge. He is vicious and decisive. Since this matter isn't over yet, he most probably wants to spread the news of the instant space dragon hall in Tianfeng World. Yi Fei Shuang's expression was really ugly. She didn't think much about it, just bowing and begging softly, "Young Master Hongji, please protect us for a period of time." If the news spread out, not only those celestial realm cultivators in the celestial world, even those few legendary god realm experts would rush over when they heard the news. Of course, but this matter concerns the first Dragon Hall. Jia Hongji hesitated. Isn't that a little inappropriate? Is it really appropriate for me to know the location of the Dragon Hall? Yi Fei Shuang's expression changed and then became determined. Fei Shuang believes in young Master Gua. Actually, the instant space Dragon Hall didn't stop outsiders from entering during the Cloud Desolate era. There are restrictions and seals within, and the treasures within can be obtained by those who are fated. I just don't want the items of the Dragon Hall to fall into the hands of the enemy. Big Brother Hongji, follow us in, it is okay. The moment he said this, Zhongsho felt Yi Fan's hand tremble uncontrollably. He couldn't help but look at the girl beside him in deep thought. It seemed like this brat wasn't as close to Jia Hongji as she seemed on the surface. That joy seemed to be mostly faked. As expected, although she was still pure and innocent. After experiencing so much, little Fan's mind was no longer pure and innocent. However, she was still as cute as before. Jia Hongji didn't agree. Instead, he was in deep thought. A few breaths later, he nodded. I will go all out to help. However, since that is the case, then we can't waste any more time. The faster the better. Although your Xiankong world-breaking movement talismans are not bad, there are too few changes and it is easy for people to intercept you. I have a flying boat here. Its speed is no slower than the Xiankong world-breaking movement talisman. Chapter 807. I have a flying boat here. Its speed is no slower than the Xiankong world-breaking movement talisman. After saying this, he frowned and looked towards Zhongsho. Although he didn't say anything, his eyes were asking, was he going to bring this random person along? Yi Fei Shuang hesitated and took in a deep breath. Brother Zhong, this matter has nothing to do with you. This trip to the first Dragon Hall is really dangerous. It isn't like the third Dragon Hall where the restrictions are weaker. Why don't Brother Zhong leave? Her words were really tactful, but her intention to chase him away was obvious. Zhong Shou himself didn't care. At most, he would just follow from behind. With their methods, they wouldn't be able to escape from his control. Not to mention other things. Just for Yi Feiyan, he wouldn't let them succeed. Yi Feiyan didn't want to, still hugging Zhong Shou's hand tightly, her lips pouting. No, brother Zhong Shou has to go too. Since brother Zhuya can go, then why can't brother Shou go too? Her tone was really firm, and there was no room for doubt. Yi Feishuang's brow furrowed and was about to persuade her. Yi Feiyan said, "If brother Zhong Shou leaves now, what if he meets those bad people? Sister, did you forget that he saved our lives in the past? Since there are benefits in the Dragon Hall, then all the more we can't abandon him." When Zhong Shou heard this, his heart felt warm, and he felt really weird. These two sisters, Yi Feishuang, who always needed someone to take care of them, were really smart. In case news of the Dragon Hall was leaked, it was okay for someone like him to be with the two sisters. If he left alone, he was destined to be killed. Yi Feishuang held her breath, and then she was deep in thought. Looking at Jia Hongji, she didn't know what to say. In the end, Jia Hongji took the initiative to move. "My boat is really big. Actually, it is okay for brother Zhong to follow. Just now, I only asked because the journey is dangerous. Since Sister Feiyan wants to, then let's follow you. This place is dangerous and we can't delay. Let's talk about it once we board." With that, Jia Hongji flung his sleeve. A boat flew over from afar. Then, he wrapped them up with his magic power and brought them into the giant ship. The hull of the ship swayed in the air, and a shadow of light flashed as it sped off into the distance. It was actually a peak magical treasure. When he went all out, as expected, it was just a little slower than the Xiankong world-breaking escape talisman. However, even though he said that the ship was huge, it was still several times smaller than Zhong Shou's Royal Demon Divine Shuttle. It was only 3,000 feet long and was divided into several layers. There were hundreds of rooms. It was like a small palace with luxurious decorations. Jia Hongji was steering the boat at the front. Yi Feishuang was also there, accompanying him as he chatted. Zhong Shou boarded the ship, but was forcefully dragged by Yi Feiyan to the back deck of the giant ship. Only when they reached here did Yi Feiyan release her hand and sit by the railing. Looking at the void behind them, as well as the wake created by the giant boat, Jiang Chun felt a chill run down his spine. Her face was frowning like a bitter gourd, filled with worry. Zhong Shouxin walked over and sat down beside her. He then asked curiously, "This young master Zhuya, how did you two sisters meet?" "A year ago, sister and I went to the Nine Extreme World to get something. Brother Jia was there and said that he fell in love with sister at first sight. Then, he helped us a lot. After a few times, we became familiar with each other." Yi Feiyan said leisurely. Her expression was really calm. "Sister said that he is really straightforward and reliable." He seemed really tempted, but didn't agree. Zhong Shou listened on quietly and then smiled. "That is a good thing. Even if there are God Realm cultivators, they might not be able to catch up. Why are you frowning?" This Jia Hongji was born with a body full of good looks. His skin was like jade, and he was indeed very charming. "I don't believe that brother Shou can't see it." Yi Feiyan scoffed angrily. However, she unknowingly cast a spell. It tugged at the jade pendant hanging on her waist, disturbing the sound patterns on this side. When their voices spread out 3 feet, it was already noise. At this moment, it also cut off the spiritual sense of others. Yi Feiyan was like a little girl in love, leaning close to Zhong Shou. She muttered softly, like she was saying words of love that she didn't want others to hear. Her expression was really shy, and her actions were really natural. "Although I don't have evidence, I feel that he isn't a good person. Moreover, isn't it too much of a coincidence this time? Is Yuqinyang really such an easy person to talk to? Why does sister trust him so much?" Zhong Shou nodded his head to show that he understood. Thinking to himself, was this the intuition of a woman? How terrifying. However, in terms of coincidence, he was even more coincidental than Jia Hongji. Actually, it wasn't that Yi Feishuang didn't notice anything suspicious. However, at this moment, she had no other choice. If she took a gamble, she might have a chance to live. If she didn't, she would die together with him. Jia Hongji's last few sentences were completely controlled by his words. Since they were going to the Dragon Hall, then they had to let this person follow them. Since the other party had already lent a helping hand, how could he have the nerve to let this person take such a huge risk and make a wasted trip? At this moment, she was both accompanying them and also monitoring them. This woman was like a porcupine. She wrapped herself up with numerous spikes and looked around warily. If he wanted to hold her in his hands would first be pierced by these sharp spikes. Oh, Fei Xuan was still cuter. Although she was pure, she could discern the warmth and coldness of a person's heart. I know that sister has no choice, but I still feel uneasy, Yi Fan said and raised her head, using her pitiful eyes to look towards Zhong Shou. I am sorry for just now. I am worried that Jia young master has bad intentions. Maybe someone will deal with Brother Shou, so I pulled you up. Don't blame me. Why would I? Zhong Shou pinched her nose and then asked curiously, Then, what are you prepared to do now? I will take it one step at a time. Yi Fan clenched her small fists and said seriously, As long as we enter the Dragon Hall and use the restrictions there, they won't be able to do anything to us. At most, we will hide there for decades and not come out. So that is the case. Zhong Shou nearly burst out laughing. If that Jia Hongji would let these two sisters have their way, then that would be great. Why didn't you think about asking me to help you? Who knows, maybe like before, I would just need one or two swords to slay all of them. Yi Fan was stunned, shifting her body away and looking up and down at Zhong Shou. She then covered her mouth and burst out laughing. Brother Shou, you are pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. If I didn't know your ability, I would really think that your cultivation is average. If other people saw you, they wouldn't be able to imagine that your sword skills would be so high. Zhong Shou smiled and nodded his head. As expected, this girl had good eyes. Then Yi Fan sighed. However, that Yu Canyang is already intermediate celestial realm. I heard that his sword path is about to touch the peak of the soul realm. That Jia Hongji is even stronger than him. She knew that Zhong Shou's sword skills were indeed high in the cloud world. However, only a few years had passed since the two of them parted. At that time, Zhong Shou's cultivation was only grade 8. A few years later, at most, he would be spirit realm or even intermediate spirit realm. However, so what? He definitely wouldn't be the opponent of Yu Qingyang and Jia Hongji. The difference of a realm was like that of heaven and earth, something that couldn't be crossed. She asked curiously, I forgot to ask, why are you here? Was it like what Sister said, that you were chased out of the cloud world by the Taoist faction? That Taoist faction loves to bully people and is really annoying. When Zhong Shou heard this, he was speechless and sighed. He didn't keep the royal demon god shuttle and released the blue fire Xian turtle to save time. As expected, it was a huge mistake. If he had this celestial realm protector beast to help him out, how would things end up like this? With its mutated god beast body, be it Yu Qingyang or Jia Hongji, they would have to go around it and avoid it. If he was annoyed, he would directly charge over, and that would be enough for the two of them. Just as he was thinking about this, Zhong Shou's eyes suddenly focused as he looked into the distance. In the next instant, he saw a few strong auras chase over from behind. They gave off a huge aura. Their blade shadows were like rainbows. They charged towards the giant boat. As for Jia Hongji, he laughed out loud. You are still 3,000 breaths away, and you dare to attack from a distance and try to stop me? The few of you are underestimating my Jia separation hook. The hook flashed and drew in the air. Not only did it slice those few streaks of energy into pieces, it also used the power of the energy to increase the speed of the giant boat. Following this, there would be blade shadows and spells that descended here. Jia Hongji still didn't fear, one hook slashing the void and one shattering. The giant boat's speed didn't decrease at all, until they smashed into an area where their spiritual sense was unable to reach out outside of the boat. Shuang Ocean? Zhong Shou looked around. What he saw was pitch black, and he couldn't see anything. However, Zhongsho knew that all around were exploding space fissures. It was endless, but it contained a huge amount of power. If they weren't careful, they would be ripped to shreds by the power of this space. Brother Zong is knowledgeable. It is indeed Shuang Ocean. The one who spoke was Zhuya Hongji. Unknowingly, he had walked in from the front of the deck into this place. His eyes were filled with confidence as he looked behind the boat. Now that we are here, those people won't be able to find us. Yi Feishuang's expression also became much more relaxed. In this Shuang Ocean, spiritual sense definitely wouldn't be able to reach in. Otherwise, they would be ripped to shreds by the space power here, and their souls would be injured. Even God Realm experts would be the same. They were pretty much out of danger here. The chances of them catching up had been reduced by half. She bowed towards Jia Hongji gratefully. Thank you, young Master Hongji. If not for you, little Han and I wouldn't know what to do. I have nothing to thank you with, but the first Dragon Hall has many treasures, so I might not disappoint you. There was a hint of guilt in his words, as if he was ashamed of doubting Jia Hongji. Chapter 808. There was a hint of guilt in his words, as if he was ashamed of doubting Jia Hongji. If he really had a plan against the two of them, he definitely wouldn't have entered this Shuang Ocean. Jia Hongji sensed something and waved his hand magnanimously. It is okay. This is normal. If I were you, I would do the same. As for the instant space dragon hall in the cloud world, I wasn't pretentious and was indeed a little curious. It would be great if I could get some good luck. However, if he wanted to thank her, he would be annoyed. Why we have to do this between us? Feishuang, don't you know my intentions? Yi Feishuang smiled and didn't reply. Her watery eyes glanced at Zhongsho with an unknown meaning. Then, she sighed and turned around to leave. Zhongsho's lips twitched, and he shook his head and didn't say a word. When the two of them left, he had an idea. It was the dragon blood on his arm that had started to move again. Ao Kun, why isn't this fellow resting up? Why did he waste his essence energy to contact me? Zhongsho was filled with doubt. He guessed that after Ao Kun was badly injured, he wouldn't have gone too far. He should have been nearby. I forgot. This fellow is also from the Instant Space Dragon race. Since this concerns the Instant Space Dragon Hall, how could he be a bystander? However, could it be that Ao Kun is able to know the situation here from thousands of worlds away? He only felt that it was unbelievable. Zhongsho tried to sense the spiritual sense that Ao Kun sent over. Who knows if it was because he was badly injured or because his cultivation wasn't as good as Long Ying's. When they were on Dragon Gathering Mountain, Long Ying could speak to him from 10,000 worlds away. The dragon blood that Ao Kun left only passed down a talisman. There was only one talisman, but after it was unlocked, it contained a few sentences. There were two meanings. The first was unexpected, but it was to break away from Zhongsho and take care of Feishuang and Fan. The second one was a unique ice hornless dragon that could rush over at any time. Zhongsho did not mind. He had already made up his mind. Even without Ao Kun's request, he would not stand by and do nothing. The rest of the journey was uneventful. Jia Hongji first drove the giant boat out of the Shuang Sea. Then, under Yi Feishuang's guidance, they traveled through the void. It seemed like Yi Feishuang was also unable to confirm the exact location of the Instant Space Dragon Hall. They could only search the various world rivers and spirit rivers. The two of them still couldn't find the exact location. Instead, it was Zhongsho who vaguely found traces of the Dragon Palace through the connection between the Thunder-Winged Dragon and Ao Kun's dragon blood. Is it the Xiansong world? So it's here. Thinking back to the past, there was an ancient end realm in the cloud world who seemed to have formed his Dao in Xuansong world. Then, without hesitation, he charged back into the cloud world. Although they were nowhere to be found in the end, they caused numerous alien races to die, and they had no choice but to retreat from the cloud world. If this Instant Space Dragon Hall had something to do with that end realm, then this Dragon Hall was definitely hidden in a secret realm. In the next instant, they heard Yi Feishuang exclaim in joy. Found it! Zhongsho looked out when he heard that. only to see Fei Shuang standing at the side of the boat. His eyes were filled with joy as he looked to the side. However, then he looked around warily. Dozens of talismans shot out and spread out in all directions. It caused many spiritual patterns to shake and spread 100,000 miles of space. Jia Hongji smiled when he saw that. Don't worry, I have already checked. There is no one else here. Yi Fei Shuang didn't notice anything and heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he carefully took out a compass that was carved with the shape of a dragon and recited a spell. Then, a ball of spiritual light wrapped up the giant boat. In just a moment, a weird power charged over from the void. It sucked the flying boat into the distance. In just a moment, the boat passed through an invisible barrier and entered a special space. The expressions of the four people were all dazzled and bewitched. They saw that in front of them was a world with numerous stars. There were many colors, numerous rainbow lights intersecting and shining. It was really beautiful. Fei Shuang was slightly distracted, and then she came back to her senses. Behind him, there was a faint smile on his face as he pointed at a huge palace floating in the air not far away. The scale was comparable to the third Dragon Hall. It was also 2 times bigger. That is the instant space Dragon Hall. This hall hasn't been opened for 10,000 years. As long as there is instant space dragon blood as a sacrifice, the doors can be opened. Hearing about you really can't compare to meeting you in person. Jia Hongji nodded his head. A weird glow flashed in his eyes before he calmed down once more. Then he laughed. It was like he couldn't suppress his laughter, and it became louder and louder. He spread out his spiritual sense and spread 1,000 miles. So, it is here within Xuansong World. It really took me so much effort to find it. I spent so much effort. Yi Feian felt that something wasn't right away. Her face was ashen white as she grabbed Zhongshuo's shoulder, her fingernails nearly digging into his flesh. Yi Fei Shuang's face was ashen white, but she forced out a smile. Young Master Hongji, what do you mean by that? It means that I spent so much effort to find this place. Jia Hongji shook his head, and the laughter finally stopped. Miss Fei Shuang, from start to finish you have been wary of me. So how would you not know? Yi Fei Shuang laughed when she heard that. As expected, none of your words were true. To think that I really believed you just now. That might not be the case. When I said that I fell in love with you at first sight, I wasn't lying at all. It was the same for your sister. Unfortunately, she didn't have any feelings for me, so I could only use some methods. Coincidentally, I had to get this instant space Dragon Hall. Jia Hongji said and waved his hand. Since you all have found it, then you can show yourselves. Everyone, please remember the promise you made earlier. The moment he said this, the space was instantly ripped open. The first to appear was the cruel sun, Sword Saint Yuqinya. Of course, I remember this year's deal. I can increase the price by 10%. He walked in confidently and smiled. I will let the two of you know. This Jia Hongji is one of the 9 hall heads of Juelong Celestial Region. Zhongshuo's brow rose up when he heard that. He looked at Jia Hongji. Juelong Celestial Region had a close relationship with Juelong City of the Cloud World. Jia Hongji smiled and didn't speak. Yi Fei Shuang and Yi Fei Shuang's body shook as they stared furiously at Jia Hongji. Before this, I was only angry, but now I am filled with hatred. Zhu Yasi played the lead in this play with good intentions and patience. The second one to appear was a monk in a black kasaya. For these 2 girls, he was actually willing to wait for 2 full years. No wonder Juelong Celestial Region has so many talents but still has Zhuya Hongji. Master Kuimo is right. The person who replied was the third. He wore a golden robe and was around 40 years old. On the clothes, there was the symbol of the Tianfang Cultivation Guild. The symbol of the Tianfang Cultivation Guild. However, didn't Cultivator Jia prepare to take down these 2 girls after entering the palace? Why did you choose this place? Cultivator Kunren, I have no choice. These 2 women were quick-witted, and their suspicions were hard to resolve. If I follow them in, not only will I not be able to find out the secrets within, but there will also be more variables and risks. In that case, it would have been better to join forces with all of you right from the start and attack with full force. Just as the few of them spoke, several more people stepped in. They were all really magnanimous and had extraordinary appearances. This is a good plan. The ninth person who appeared was a cold and solemn person. He wasn't from a night demon race, but he had wings on his back. His entire body was filled with muscles. Although he was in human form, he looked more like a beast. He looked at the ship with interest. I am interested in these two girls. Is Brother Zhuya willing to part with them? Yi Feishuang's face was also ashen white. Before this, she was still hoping that she could use that last method to escape into the palace. However, at this moment, there was no hope at all in her eyes. The only thing she didn't understand was that Jia Hongji didn't do anything, so why were these people able to follow? Yi Feiyan bit her lips, and a thread of blood flowed out. Zhong Shou asked curiously, "You recognize these few people? Are they very famous?" Yi Feiyan looked at Zhong Shou expressionlessly. She really didn't understand why Zhong Shou would be in the mood to ask such a question. However, at this moment, since he knew that he was going to die anyway, then he decided to let go of everything. His tone didn't change at all. Cruel Sun Sword Saint, bitter demon merchant, Tianfeng Guild Kunren. There's also the martial heaven god who spoke just now. They are all world lords around Tianfeng world. As for the others, to be able to stand on the same level as them, they are probably top celestial realm experts. After the martial heaven god, there were no more intermediate celestial realm experts. Dozens of normal initial celestial realm cultivators and dozens of spirit realm experts. Jia Hongji smiled. I am really tempted by these two women. Why does brother will have to fight with a junior like me? If you like dragon girls, my Juelong celestial domain will definitely help you find one. Martial heaven god laughed, his eyes flashing, and then he nodded his head. Then we will do as you say. Just be quick. Also, this palace needs instant space dragon blood to open. There are many treasures in this hall. We will follow our agreement and rely on our luck to help you get that item. Save it, Jia Hongji said flatly, and then took out an item from his waist. He casually tossed it aside. 10,000 world soul entangling incense. I think Miss Feishuang doesn't recognize this item. Feishuang, you also heard what I said just now. I need to borrow your dragon blood. He smiled as he looked at the few of them. As for Zhong Shou, he didn't care. He didn't care about him at all. This pitiful bug could be crushed to death with just one finger. The moment he said this, he felt that one of his subordinates behind him was acting weird. Turning around, he saw that this person's face was unusually ashen white. His eyes were filled with fear as he looked towards Zhong Shou. He couldn't help but feel weird. This person was a subordinate he had called back from the Cloud World. He was in charge of Juelong City and was a true elite of Juelong Celestial Region. Why was it like this? He asked curiously, why is it like this? Do you recognize this person? That person's face was really ugly as he slightly nodded his head. How could he not recognize this person? Cloud World Gantian Country Ruler, Bloodsword Monster Lord Zhong Shou. A few months ago, he personally saw this person kill several celestial realm experts when he was going through his tribulation. Chapter 810. That person's expression was really ugly as he nodded his head slightly. How could he not recognize this person? Cloud World Gantian Country Ruler, Bloodsword Monster Lord Zhong Shou. A few months ago, he personally saw this person kill several celestial realm experts when he was going through his tribulation. Zhong Shou was delighted when he heard this. So he wasn't really a nameless person. This person also came from the Cloud World. That was interesting. Bloodsword Monster Lord. Jia Hongji's brow rose up, his eyes filled with surprise. Before this, he looked down on Zhong Shou, who knew that this fellow actually had some skill. To be able to make his subordinate react like that, his strength was definitely not simple. He laughed and asked with interest, how is your cultivation? You must be really famous in the Cloud World. However, he didn't notice that when he said Bloodsword Monster Lord, the people who were shocked were shocked. Among the 100 or so people gathered here, the expressions of more than 10 people changed drastically. Their cultivations weren't high, only Realm 2. However, there were one or two Celestial Realm cultivators who seemed to have thought about something. Their faces turned ashen white. The Spirit Realm expert who spoke just now had a bitter expression on his face. Not only is he famous, but he is invincible in the cloud world. 2 months ago, when he was going through his tribulation, he used King Path martial arts to cast flying knife techniques and killed 4 Celestial Realm experts. The first sentence wasn't much. Invincible in a world that depended on which world he was in. The cloud world spiritual wave had just risen. So what if he was invincible in a world? No matter how strong he was, how strong could he be? When they heard the last sentence, their expressions turned serious. He killed them when he was going through his tribulation. In other words, when most of his strength was restricted by the tribulation lightning, he still had the ability to kill Celestial Realm experts. Then, after he went through his tribulation, how strong was he? Only the words King Path martial arts made him feel slightly at ease. This Zhong Shou actually used the strength of a country to kill Celestial Realm experts. In this Xuansong world, far away from the country, he might not be able to do that. Zhong Shou was still smiling, his killing intent becoming stronger and stronger. The 7-cycle Xiantong full restriction was unlocked one by one. This allowed one's true yuan and soul power to not be restricted. Among the many Celestial Realm cultivators, one person suddenly stepped out and bowed towards Zhong Shou with a solemn expression. I am only here because of Jia Hongji's invitation. Coincidentally, he was greedy for the instant space dragon hall, which was why he agreed to help him. He didn't participate in anything and had no grievances with the 2 ladies. If he had known beforehand that the monarch was here, he would definitely not have come. I wonder if your majesty will allow me to leave this place? As soon as he finished speaking, 2 other immortal realm cultivators followed closely behind him with strange expressions on their faces. Zhong Shou clasped his hands. Although they didn't say anything, they had the same intention. They were asking Zhong Shou if they could leave. Jia Hongji's face was ashen. He didn't expect that just the words Blood Sword Monster Lord would cause the 3 experts he spent so much effort to invite to back off. Even in front of him was the first Dragon Palace, which was said to have countless treasures. He was still like this, not caring at all. Li Fengfei. These 3 words were pretty much squeezed out from the gaps of his teeth, filled with a sinister and cold aura. Li Fengfei didn't care at all, shaking his head. 2 months ago, I made a trip to the cloud world and was fortunate enough to witness the monarch's battle. If Palace Head Jia wants to blame me, then I will accept it. Those who are good at protecting themselves should act according to the situation. Fei Shuang and Fei's cherry lips opened wide, unable to close. Their eyes were filled with shock. What did this fellow beside them do? Why did he just say his name and make the 3 Celestial Realm cultivators want to back off? It seemed like whether or not they could leave this place today would depend on Zhong Shou's intentions. What was going on? They felt lost in their hearts. However, there was a little more life in their eyes that were filled with despair. Zhong Shou glanced at this Celestial Realm cultivator surnamed Li. To be able to judge the situation and protect himself, this person was quite interesting. Thinking about it seriously, he said flatly, since the Instant Space Dragon Hall doesn't allow outsiders to enter, then all of you can stay here. Then, all of you could just look on from the side. Once I deal with these people, all of you can go in and get some benefits. He knew that this Instant Space Dragon Hall was similar to the 3rd Dragon Hall. One person definitely wouldn't be able to sweep it clean. When he couldn't eat alone, Zhong Shou was always easy to talk to. It was rare for someone to respect him so much. In front of these 2 brats, it gave Zhong Shou a lot of face. Naturally, he didn't mind returning the favor. Getting benefits from this Instant Space Dragon Hall would also prevent these people from talking nonsense after they left. Li Fengfei was delighted when he heard this. After bowing, he wanted to back off. At this moment, Kumo's eyes were filled with annoyance. The Buddhist staff in his hand caused countless spiritual storms to swirl around him for no reason. The 9-10 rings on the Buddha's staff were also constantly shaking, making clanging sounds. Deal with us? What arrogance! Invincible in the cloud world. I want to see what ability you, Bloodsword Monster Lord, has. You dare to be so arrogant? Instantly, several streaks of golden light spread all around. It looked bright and majestic, no different from a Buddhist light. Within, there was Sanskrit chants spreading out. However, just as it got close to Zhongsho, the golden light gave out cries. Then, numerous black gas spread out from within. The golden light was unable to get close to Zhongsho, but Yi Feishuang and Yi Fan couldn't take it. Threads of golden light entered their bodies. Their expressions were pained and then excited. An alluring red flush appeared on their faces. They gritted their teeth and tried their best to hold on. Heart Demon, Soul, Charming Technique. Zhongsho didn't help the two sisters to expel the golden light. The experience of resisting this heart demon was actually beneficial to the two of them. They just needed to defend and not let them lose their minds. As for himself, no evil could enter his body. Even if he did, he would be able to kill it with his sword. He was the natural counter of these demons and monsters. It is the evil demon Buddhist technique. As Master Kuimo spoke, his expression became unsightly. This secret technique had been tried and tested thousands of times. Who knows how many cultivators died under the attacks of the heart demon Buddhist technique. However, at this moment, it didn't affect Zhongsho at all. All the evil soul demon Buddhas that he raised would melt the moment they got close to his body. Even the abilities of the inner demons around him were greatly suppressed. If not, these two girls who were only at peak heaven realm definitely wouldn't be able to hold on. With a cold snort, Master Kumo's Buddhist staff shook again, and his mouth muttered something. Along with the Sanskrit chants, balls of Buddhist light shone behind him. Many golden Buddha statues appeared, giving off a majestic aura. 30 Buddha shadows appeared. Their heaven eyes opened in the center of their foreheads as they stared coldly at Zhongsho. Then numerous giant Buddha hands formed in the air. They pressed down towards Zhongsho. Almost every hand contained a kind of law divine ability. Yu Qingyang smiled when he saw the situation. What a Kasayapa Buddha unlimited technique. I haven't seen you for 2 years, and you died at the hands of Brother Kumo. Now, there are 3 more. It seems like Brother Kumo's cultivation has improved once more. Although he said that, he was already prepared to help. He felt that this Zhongsho was really weird. For some reason, maybe because of the 3 people who backed out, he felt a little uneasy. The sooner he dealt with it, the better. The others all had smiles on their faces. They all knew a little about the foundation of this secret technique. It required one to kill cultivators of the same level, extract their primordial souls, and refine them. Only then would one be able to form this Buddha and grasp part of their fighting techniques and divine abilities. It was very impressive. The bigger the Buddha that was formed, the stronger power was. It was said that it could reach up to 3,000. The light was vast, unlimited, and endless. Few people in the same grade could compare to it. Fei Shuang and Fei panicked once more. Facing the giant Buddha hands that slapped over, they felt like they couldn't move at all. Not only were they unable to raise any thoughts of fighting back, they couldn't even think about escaping. At this moment, they could only wait to die. Coincidentally, one could see the Yu Qingyang sword was also slashing over. The sword Radiance transformed and then turned into half of the setting sun. It pretty much swallowed up Zhongsho's body. As for the other Celestial Realm experts, they didn't make a sound and attacked one after another. They didn't hesitate to go all out. Their eyes were filled with sadness. They had just seen a bit of hope, but in the blink of an eye, they fell into the abyss. Yi Feishuang's heart felt like it was being stabbed by needles as she gritted her teeth. The sadness in her heart was unable to be shown on her face. That's right. She shouldn't have had such thoughts. She only dragged down Zhong. Her thoughts suddenly stopped because at this moment, she couldn't think about it anymore. Her eyes opened wide as she looked forward, only to see a bright silver light slide out from Zhongsho's sleeves. It went against the golden Buddhist light and headed right for Kumo. It was really nimble. When it accelerated to its maximum speed, it was so fast that it couldn't be seen. Even the 30 Buddha hands were unable to block it. It went against the flow, following which a blood flower exploded out from Kumo's brow. As for the black-clothed old monk, his face was filled with shock and confusion, as well as disbelief and bewilderment. In the end, it turned into intense unwillingness as he stared furiously at Zhongsho. However, that vast aura finally started to collapse. The true essence on the blade exploded, causing Kumo's head and soul to be smashed into pieces. Just at this moment, the moment he died, the 30 Buddha phantoms and the countless Buddha hands were all defeated. Before they touched Zhongsho's body, they had already broken into pieces. They turned into balls of vengeful demons, charging and fleeing in all directions. They seemed to be terrified of Zhongsho's aura. Even the evil demon souls that entered Fan and Feishuang's bodies were the same. They didn't dare to attack when the two goddesses weren't defending. This change happened in just an instant. It caused the bodies of everyone present to freeze up, unable to speak. In just the blink of an eye, Kumo, who was worthy of being called the strongest among them, had already fallen under that silver blade light. Disbelief and shock mixed together, causing everyone to be slightly absent-minded. Li Fengfei in the distant side. As expected, she looked at the people in front of her with a pitiful gaze. It was this flying knife technique again. Six-god flying knife. When the knife is used, even gods and Buddhas can't block it, much less Kumo. That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.